The Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is a follow-up Friday edition. Today is the 19th day of September. That's 9/19/2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host with my son Joe Hagmann, fellow investigator, researcher. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3-hour programming, 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, and analysis. Information that you need to know in these perilous times in which we live. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented in 3D. That's our mantra. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the internet at hagmannandhagmann.com. That's hagmannandhagmann.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. I want to thank you there. You can tune us in at the hagmannandhagmannreport.com, not to be confused with our home base. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your belief, your trust in us, and thank you for deliberately tuning in to listen to our program. Tonight we've got a great show for you lined up. The first hour, we're going to have two guests. Well, actually, we're going to have Steve Quayle interviewing Jeremiah Farrell. It's going to be a fantastic interview. And then the subsequent 2 hours, of course, we're going to have open lines and analysis of news and information. Joe, welcome to the studio. It's great to have you here. And
yes, it is. And we do
have here with you together.
We do have both of our guests on. I'm going to bring Mr. Steve Quayle on his website, stevequayle.com. And I'm going to let Steve bring on Jeremiah. Steve, welcome to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Thank you so much, Joe and Doug, and thanks for letting us bring on Jeremiah Farrell, who just got back from Iraq and getting his personal affairs in order to go back over. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremiah led a team of all volunteers to go right into the heart of the beast in Iraq to basically help the Kurds to rescue, and by the grace of God, the Kurds were the ones that rescued the people that were facing certain slaughter. And I wanted Jeremiah to come on and share because so many of you were so gracious to help them. And you know, Doug and Joe, one of the things I've purposed in my heart that I want to absolutely get behind something that God is in. And so many people try and do their thing. Tonight I think you're going to hear a pretty remarkable story of how God led Jeremiah in his desire not just to talk about what's going on over there, but get involved. He obviously is a Marine. Jamie went with him, another fellow Marine. They had a couple other individuals that I'll allow him to speak to his team on. But this is the difference when people go and the people of God back them up in intercessory prayer. And Jeremiah made sure through his wife Amanda that they posted the updates. But with no further ado, I want to bring on Jeremiah. Hi, Jeremiah.
It's good to be on with you.
And Jeremiah, because you talk a little soft, go ahead and, raise your volume up and just share with the people because, again, so many of the people listening in were praying for you guys. And I want, the people to understand how God so marvelously moved. And so share how the vision began for you to do something, get involved, having been over there 12 times, meaning, as a Marine or as a, security contractor for the State Department. Share your heart tonight, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I just really want to thank the Lord for even allowing us to be part of this. It was truly, it was mind-blowing that he would use flawed vessels like us to be part of this thing that he's doing. I'm just so thankful to him for even using us. Thank you, Hagmann and Hagmann and Steve for having me on. Let's see. I guess it all started with the 40,000 Yazidis that were stranded up on Mount Sinjar. I have done multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. The Lord has graced me with the ability to go do those things without any harm coming to me. And I really am super thankful for him doing that and giving me the training and the ability to go to these places and help out where needed. So when I saw what was going on up there and the systematic, beheading of children and just the horrible demonic things that were occurring, my wife and I were just somberly praying about, what we could potentially do. I know that the training background that the Lord has given me gives me a certain perspective on these kind of things. And my initial reaction was, I need to jump in there and start basically, rescuing these people with my own bare hands and helping to defeat anybody who would try and come against the innocent. At the same time, the Lord's ways are higher than our ways, and we know that we need to submit everything to prayer. And so that's what my wife and I did. We eventually got hooked up with another relief organization that's currently operating over in Iraq, one that my wife has done some work with. And I was put into contact with their director, and I told him my skill set, and I basically said, if possible, I'd like to help out in any way that you guys would need me, from a security perspective or just laying hands and praying for people. And we really had no idea what it was going to look like, but we just gave it up to the Lord. And within a few minutes, he called me back, and he had said that morning he was praying, where are all the ex-military guys at that would help with this kind of thing? And then obviously we had talked, and he just knew that was of the Lord, so he pretty much gave me the green light to head on over there, and he asked me to assemble a team. So we just obviously continued to pray about it. I made sure to give you a call because the Lord's brought us together in a really interesting way, and I just obviously respect you and your heart for the innocent and your heart for being a watchman. So I discussed it with you, and you obviously, told me that you wanted to help in any way possible, and that I had your backing, which was really, it was really moving, and I really appreciate that. So again, thank you, Steve, and thank you to everyone, all of your listeners, and all of your supporters who have helped since you've, put out the call for this organization and for us to be able to go and help these people. It's really, I don't know, there's not much I can say other than thank you so much to everyone and to you, Steve. I basically started working on assembling a team of individuals, praying about it and finding out, that there's a specific person that needs to go over and do these kind of things, and it's not, the emphasis isn't on the training that they have, the emphasis is on their character and their heart with the Lord. And if they have the training required, then that's a bonus, and that's kind of how I looked at it. So that was the first requirement, and so I was asking former Marines that I had known, people who are in a similar line of work as myself, friends that I trust who are, able to do this kind of thing, who are freed up to be able to do it. The first team member that I got was my friend Toby. He's a childhood friend of mine. He's a paramedic. He's been trained in weapons since he was very young. He's a better shot than probably I and most of the guys I know in the Marines were, so I felt very confident with him being able to go over with me. From then I was praying about a lot of different Marines and service members that I thought could help, because the security situation over there is one that's, it's just kind of concerning, and that's why the director of this other relief organization was happy to have us go over there and help them. But I don't know, I wasn't getting the response that I was looking for from these other guys. They're like, well, we'll think about it, maybe, I'd like to go, but I'm really not sure, what's it going to be like? And it wasn't really what I was looking for. So fortunately, you got an email from a former service member, a former Marine, who was infantry like myself, and you forwarded me his email, and I was slightly leery at first because I don't know the person, and you didn't know him personally or anything like that. But I told the Lord, and I believe, this is what He wanted, was me not to close the door on anyone, but to submit everyone to Him. And so that's pretty much what I did, and I just continued to pray about it, and I talked with this individual, and over the course of the next couple of days, I just felt the incredible peace of the Holy Spirit, not to mention just his passion and zeal for helping the innocent was just right in line with what we were hoping for. His name is Jamie, and he's just been an incredible brother, and he became the third member of the team with myself and Toby. And then from then on, we continued to look for more members, and another friend of ours named Katie, who's a registered nurse, she works in the ICU at the local hospital. She expressed interest on going and continued to pray about it, and it ended up working out. So what we ended up doing is leaving in pairs. Myself and Toby left first, and Jamie and Katie came after that, and it ended up working very, very well, and we could tell that the hand of the Lord was on it completely the entire way. I mean, you know how little things happen here and there, and verses pop up, and somebody tells you something, or there's a word here or a dream there. The Spirit of the Lord was over the entire operation. And, I mean, we got there, and, I mean, we hit the ground running. The first day we were out with the refugees, I mean, it was kind of eerie getting into town. We were in Kurdistan, which is, it's just the northeast portion of Iraq. They have their own autonomous region over there, and that's where most of the refugees have fled that are fleeing from ISIS or ISIL or whatever they're called now. And we got into town, and as we were driving, we just started to see masses of tents all over the place. And I mean, there were thousands and thousands of families that are just, in the actual city itself and on the outskirts and just all over Kurdistan, because they've been friendly and they've been, defending them. They maintain a good security perimeter to protect these people. They give them aid when they can. Obviously, there's 500,000 or more of these refugees. So, I mean, the government does what they can, but they can't help everybody. And the ones that they do help, it's kind of few and far between, just because they don't have the financial backing that a country such as America does. But there were refugees everywhere. We went out and started helping a local Shebek refugee camp. It had, maybe 100 families. And the organization we went with and were trying to help, it was on their heart to help the refugees who were on the outskirts, because the refugees who were in closer to the city center were primarily Christians, and they were getting help from the local churches, which is outstanding, and that's just a testament to the body of Christ helping one another, which we need to do. We need to help our family, we need to help our church body, we need to help the world. The Lord has called us to all of those ministries, but they were being taken care of by the churches fairly well. They each had a tent, which was good. They had shelter, they had some food. So they were going, the organization that I'm speaking about, we were going out to the outskirts to do our best to help those who weren't receiving help. And, it could be a little dodgy at times, because sometimes we go outside of the security checkpoints, and that's outside of that ring of security that Kurdistan has. But we knew that the Lord was there and protecting us, and we had a peace of the Lord about it. And sure enough, when we go and do that, we were blessed with a security escort to do that. And we just encountered so many people who were in such dire need. It was just really hard to deal with at times. I mean, there was one outreach we did where there was a widow that we found out we had kind of overlooked, because we asked the leader of the refugee camp, how many families do you have? What are their names? What do they need? And they overlooked the widow, and as a result of that, we did. So she came up later and was like, what can you do for me? I don't have a husband. He was killed by ISIS. These are my, 5 children. Can you help me too? And that's just, yeah, I felt horrible that we had overlooked her, and we made it a point to make sure to go to her, first and foremost each time, and ask her what she needed, because that's one of the chief ministries, to the widows and to the orphans, and that's what the Lord has so graciously allowed us many, many times to minister to. And so many sick people over there with, from birth defects to, just diseases. And, when they're pushed out of their cities, they have to leave the hospital, and, unless they're going to convert or die. And so they leave their hospital, they leave the treatment, and then all of a sudden they're living out in the open, most of the times without a tent, maybe in an abandoned building or in their vehicle or something like that. And so they have no medical treatment. And that's one of the things that the Lord has called us to do, is to go over there and provide that medical treatment, which is why we were so graced to have Toby and Katie there. We could go and do assessments for these people and ask them what they need. And thanks to all the donations that your listeners and your supporters gave us through you and your help, we were able to buy, I think it was 12 trunks initially of medical supplies that we brought over on our trip. It made things difficult with baggage, but of course it was way worth it when we got there and we opened up the trunks, and there was just everything that we needed to help these people. From cortisone creams to insulin, to pain relievers, anything that you could imagine. We had our own little pharmacy almost, and we were able to help so many different refugees and hear so many heartbreaking stories. We just really appreciate your guys' help and support to be able to do that and to bless these people. And obviously, since we got there, they have local pharmacies in the city that were able to purchase medical supplies and things that it's more difficult to get over here. You can get almost any drug or medical treatment over there just over the counter. It's kind of crazy. They don't have the regulations like they have over here. But unfortunately, the refugees a lot of times don't have access to that because their finances are so distraught. They spent all their money to just get out of the city and for food to even basically survive. So it's a pretty tough situation over there, Steve.
Well, what's interesting, Jeremiah, is the fact that you prayed, you asked the Lord, and I want to share the background information, because obviously Jeremiah and I are friends. I'm friends with, we know each other, we won't go into our friendship and how it developed over the years, but the bottom line is I had laid a fleece before the Lord when Jeremiah, told me, hey, this is what he's going to do. Because number one, the first thing I thought is, Lord, I'm not going to support him unless you give me, God, your signature that you're in this thing, because I don't want my brother or his team, being basically slaughtered or murdered by these, demon-possessed, empowered entities that are slaughtering so many people. And I prayed that way. Now, this is interesting. Jeremiah said, I said to him, I think this is so cool of God, Jeremiah. He is so amazing. I said, Lord, you have to give me the proof that your hand is in this. And Jeremiah had asked me for $15,000 to get the team over there. And I said, okay, Jeremiah, I'll pray. And if the Lord provides that, I'll know that he's in it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one of my friends who I don't know, he's a listener, and I'll just say his name is Vince P., sends me an email after I'm praying and said, I just sold my house. I want to give you $15,000. That's not embellishing. It's not fibbing. It's not lying. Instantly on that, I got to tell you, Jeremiah, I just broke down and said, Lord, bless my brother Vince P., because God, he answered your call. And I guess tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'm laying the supernatural background that, and Jeremiah, I'll be blunt with you, had the Lord not done that, I couldn't have gotten involved, because I had to know that you guys were being led of the Holy Ghost. Not that I didn't believe you were, okay, but I had to know that I know that God was in it, and that he'd protect your team, and that you guys would be anointed to go in there and break the powers of darkness. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we give it right back, I'll give it right back to you, Jeremiah. This is the kind of stuff that is real, what I would call functional and fluid Christianity. Because even though the Kurds are Muslims, Jeremiah, share with the people how you could literally see the Holy Ghost. Share with the favor, and again, no names, just, generalizations of the generals even, but share how God's favor absolutely made way for you, and that, again, ladies and gentlemen, we prayed. I want to put everybody in remembrance. We prayed for those people. I don't remember, Jeremiah, if you were still in country or it's after you were there, but we were praying that God would absolutely supernaturally bless the Kurds, because they were the only ones, and I want to make this clear, they were the only ones that came to the aid of people, 40-some thousand people that would have been slaughtered. Is that accurate, Jeremiah?
And that's absolutely accurate. They're the ones who broke through and opened the road to Mount Sinjar and started evacuating the refugees, a few thousand at a time, and were putting up a defensive line to fight against ISIS, to protect the innocent and bring those people to an area where they could actually, be safe and have some security and get what they need. The Peshmerga have just been absolutely amazing in this whole thing. The way that the Lord has moved and opened up doors of favor with them has been absolutely incredible, because as I said, when we initially decided we wanted to go over there, we didn't know what it was going to look like. My first reaction is to go in there guns blazing, because that's, I guess, part of my personality, part of what the Lord's put in me to be a fighter and a warrior. But at the same time, I need to know that we need to have the wisdom of the Lord to go in and do these things. And so initially I had no idea what it was going to look like. And so we ended up getting over there, and I knew that helping the refugees was going to be a huge part of this, and the people who had just been displaced, and if possible, helping them to get from one place to another into safety, And, like I said, by the grace of the Lord, he was able to open that door so that we could help many, many refugees. But what I didn't expect was working with the Peshmerga. And it was just amazing, because the Lord opened the door by bringing one of the local Kurdish men over to help with us, and he became one of our interpreters. And his story in and of itself is just absolutely amazing. And after we talk about the Peshmerga, maybe we could get into a little bit about the people that we're working with, the former Muslims who have become Christians and seen the light of Christ, and just all that they've had to actually endure and go through to just serve the Lord. The blessing and the freedom that we have in this country that we take for granted, that we can even go to church and have families that love us while we are considered Christians. It's just, we don't know what we have. And anyways, maybe we can talk about that later. But the doors that have been opened with the Peshmerga are amazing. The individual who came to work with us, he had some contacts that were in government, in the Kurdish government, and they didn't believe that the people that this organization was over there to help these people. They're like, why would Americans come from America all the way over here into an area that's 30 minutes away from ISIS, and they're trying to make incursions into this city? Why would they come over here and help us? That doesn't make any sense. And in fact, two of the leaders of the relief organization we went over to support, they're living in the city, and they've got two of their children with them. And the Lord has called them to this kind of ministry. And that was the main thing that this person in government didn't believe. There's no way Americans would come over here with their children and help us. There's just no way. And then once they met us and they saw the kids, it just opened up the most incredible door with them, with the Kurdish government, with the military, with the favor. And, my instinctive reaction is, why would you bring your children over here? But if the Lord tells somebody to do something, then man's wisdom is nothing compared to the wisdom of the Lord. And that's what they were guided to do. And that's how we've been able to get in with the troops and the government and everything. So she ended up opening a door, our government liaison. She opened a door to get in contact with a regional commander, a local general who is controlling a southern area down there. And we went to meet with him. And it was an amazing meeting. He laid out this feast before us, and I just felt this, I don't know what to call it, I guess guilt. I'm sitting there while they're laying out a feast before us, and I was just helping refugees who had hardly anything, but I knew that if I turned it down, it would be insulting that man who's inviting us to be there with him. So it was just such a strange feeling to eat, and to be lavished was such a blessing, but I believe also that was the Lord just wanting to bless us, and we didn't want to turn that down, regardless of what it felt like to the flesh. But he lavished this feast on us, and then he just had this sit-down conversation with us where, he was thanking us. Like, we were there. I don't know how to put it. It's the most backwards feeling in the world when you go somewhere to help someone. You see that they're in need. You go and you want to help. And that's all that is in you, is just to try and serve and help the best that you possibly can. And then they lavish praises and thanks on you. And then you get more blessed by them than you could have ever possibly blessed them. That's what it felt like, and it just feels so strange. But he was just continually telling us how much he appreciated America, how much he appreciated the airstrikes. And when I heard about that, he appreciates the airstrikes. He appreciates, the help that we're giving. I know that, our government is doing the bare minimum that we possibly can to save face, but yet these people are so appreciative of the bare minimum that we're even giving. And they just looked at us with just this awe of appreciation, and it was really moving. And he asked us, he was saying, if there's any way that you guys could help us, it would be to help my soldiers learn how to treat each other if they get shot on the battlefield and if they get shrapnel wounds, because they don't know how. We don't have the training or the equipment for that. They're a very poor military, a poor country. They're fighters, but yet they don't have the equipment that they need to treat themselves if they get wounded. And that's, I heard that, and myself and Jamie in the military, we're drilled basic combat first aid from, the extremity wounds that you get with tourniquets and occlusive dressings for, chest wounds and, anything that comes as a result of shrapnel or bullet wound on the battlefield. We're drilled that over and over and over again in the military. And it was amazing because that door opened up, and it didn't open up at any other time. But once we got there, that door opened up to be able to help the troops in that way. And we just know that was the hand of the Lord. So we told them, absolutely. Absolutely, we can help you. We'll come back the next day. We'll do our best to assemble some aid kits. We'll train you. We'll train your men. Whatever you need us to do, we're here to serve you. And so the next day we came back. We were able to assemble some just basic combat first aid kits with tourniquets and whatnot, and go and give a class to some of those frontline fighters that they had pulled them off the lines, and they just came in and they learned. And we did the best we could, and we were able to pass out some kits. We obviously aren't able to equip the entire Kurdish military, but we figure if we can just do a little bit, it might spread like wildfire, and they might see the need for these things, and they can even go and purchase them themselves. We'll do the best that we can to provide as many as we can, but if they can understand the priority of this, then it's like the whole give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him when to fish. Obviously, he's fed for his lifetime, so we just need to get that into their heads, like this is important because you can save your buddy and you can save yourself, and they want that. They just they don't have the proper training, which is what we've been blessed to be able to assist them with.
With all of the relief organization that you were with, were there doctors over there that you could bring the more heavily wounded people to? I mean, were there, if you will, field hospitals set up by CRI or whoever, is there? Or was it pretty much field dressing and prayer to, save as many lives as you can?
Well, they had an interesting system set over there. We didn't set up any field hospitals. They're fighting, 10 to 15 minutes away from an actual hospital, and sometimes 5 minutes away from an actual hospital, because they're defending their own cities and their own lands, and the front lines is right there. So it's kind of an interesting situation. You see it. Unfortunately, a lot of them, they'll get wounded on the spot, and then they'll get thrown in an ambulance, and then from there they'll get taken to the local hospital. And it's the transit from the battlefield to the ambulance to the hospital that we think a lot of them were passing away, and we didn't see a whole lot of battlefield wounded, because the fights, they're skirmishes, they'll fight for a few minutes and stop, and a few shots and then stop, and we weren't there for a huge battle or anything like that. We were able to, the most notable example that we have is we were able to treat one of their generals. The government liaison pulled us over and said, we need to go right now. We've got somebody who's just injured. Can you help? And we're like, absolutely, of course. So we were able to go and meet with a general who had been hit in a car bomb. And it wasn't a car bomb. His vehicle was blown up by a suicide bomber. So that's it. They have these mixture of tactics. They use conventional warfare, and then also they include their, suicide bombers and vehicle-borne IEDs, stuff that's seen a lot in Iraq and Afghanistan over the years with insurgency. These guys are using it, mixing it with conventional tactics to conquer, and it's an interesting and horrible combination. But he was basically in his vehicle, and he showed us a video because ISIS posted the video of them blowing him up, and so it was eerie watching it on his own phone, the video of him getting blown up, and it was of an ISIS fighter putting a suicide vest on his wife or his concubine or somebody, and basically telling her to go blow herself up, and then her walking over, then videotaping it, and then blowing herself up next to his vehicle. And he was hit, his leg was injured, and then his back was injured because half of somebody else, the upper portion of somebody else's body was flown in the air with such impact that it hit his back and he was injured. So we were able to go and treat him. We had a team of guys come over from, I believe it's Grace Church in Illinois. They felt the call and the need. They saw the need that was going over, and they just bought tickets, 8 of them, including their pastor, Jim, and flew over to Kurdistan to see if they could help the refugees or anything possible, which is just absolutely amazing. I feel like we're of a similar heart and spirit, and those guys just blew us away, and they were able to help us make aid kits with us for the troops and everything. But one of their medics that came over is actually an 18 Delta Special Forces medic, and we were able to go with him and bring him along and just work on that general, and he did an absolutely outstanding job, make sure his leg was all patched up, make sure there was no shrapnel left or anything like that. And so, that was probably I feel like it was monumental, because not only were we able to help and treat the general, but we were able to pray over him and all of his men. And that's one of the coolest things I feel like about the Kurdish culture and about the Peshmerga specifically is they see themselves as Kurdish before anything else. They're Kurdish before they're Muslim. They're Kurdish before, anything culturally or ethnically. And so when we ask if we can pray for them in the name of Jesus, they just put their hands up and say, absolutely, just pray for us. So it's when you're, in a circle around a foreign general, whose background is Muslim, and you're praying in the name of Jesus after you just helped him with his shrapnel wound, it's an amazing feeling, and that's only the Lord. And like I said, I'm just so thankful that he was even would use us for something like that. But we went from one general to another, ended up meeting with the head medical general, and then we met with the actual head of the Peshmerga himself. He's the number 3 in government over there, and he met with us, found out what we were doing, and basically said, you have a green light to help our troops, to train our troops in any way possible. So that's the kind of favor that the Lord has given, and I hope that answers your question, Steve.
It does, and what I think is interesting is look at how God in His way, His knowledge, His amazing intervention, He gave you favor at the top. And it was His favor, but also, compassion. I guess the thing that blew me away, Jeremiah, just from even reading, obviously you and I texted a few times or sent emails and stuff, but just the overwhelming gratefulness. And see, here's the thing that makes me wild. The rest of the world, and now I will say this, I believe Germany gave the Kurds $50 million worth of weapons, and that's good because they needed them. But yes, the deal is that doesn't take the place of Jesus. And isn't it amazing? You see the Americans who are over there answering the call of God Almighty, making a difference, while the very people in this country who would like to go and help, or let's say even in the armed forces, are being stood down. And the whole situation. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Jeremiah knows exactly what's going on. He and his wife have, like I said, been friends of mine for years. They know it, they see it, and so when I would get the reports through emails and talking, communicating with them, it was astonishing to me, because here's what I think Jeremiah is interesting. You've lived this, so you can say amen to this. God's favor is based on who God is, not who you are.
Right.
What I mean by that is that you made yourself available, and somebody, sends, and I get a lot of emails like this, like, well, what can I do? I really want to help the Lord. If you're sincere, and I'm not talking about everybody who's going over there, but to the people that have that attitude, God will show them what to do. I think it's critical, too, that you said something at the beginning of the show. You guys prayed. You guys, forgive me. You and Amanda, your wife, prayed and said, Lord, we've got to do something. And I think it's amazing, because now the whole world, and I don't know how many millions of people listen to this, Doug can tell you, but on downloads, that there's a bright spot. Listen, there's no words to describe the fury of watching a child on videotape being beheaded, or women, Christian women, with their breasts cut off. I'm sorry, but this is the real world. Or the rape, pillage, and plunder, the total disgust for human life, and yet in the midst of the gore, in the midst of the war, it's the tenderness, the compassion, and for God so loved the world, it's Jesus. Now see, that's what blows my mind. And so I want to thank you, Jeremiah, and Jamie, if you're listening, and also, your friend and the nurse. I want to thank you guys, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. And I want to thank everybody. My brother Aaron, God bless him, in Florida, I had made a plea. I said, look, I want people to match, $5,000. I knew how much money you needed to raise, and more than anything, I knew that, you guys are basically giving up everything to go and do this, and yet God in His majesty, in His fullness of his I guess what I'm saying is His godhood, He provided for your families while they were gone. In other words, your wife, Jamie's wife, and the other families didn't lack anything, did they?
No, it was just amazing the way that worked out, because in the very beginning, like you said, we were willing to go over and without anything. We came to you knowing that you would take it to the Lord, and that's one of the reasons why we came to you. But we were thinking to ourselves, even if that doesn't work out, and we have to go over and just trust that the Lord's going to provide and empty our bank account, well, that's what we're willing to do if we believe that this is of the Lord. And thanks be to God that, it didn't have to happen that way. And to you and to your supporters and listeners who were able to, there was no need that went, that we didn't have met at home or abroad.
And all the time you were over there, Jeremiah, I was thinking all the time of this. The Jesus said, I was naked and you clothed me.
Mm-hmm.
I was hungry and you fed me. And what was the word of the Lord? Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of one of these, you've done it unto me. And I want to thank again. Listen, I want to thank everybody that donated. Obviously, you saw the link on my website. But here's where I'm at. I want to be blunt. I was raised in church after I got saved. I paid my tithes, I do my offerings, and finally when I left the church, I said, Lord, from this point on, every dollar I give, I want it to be effective in a life. If I'm able to give $1,000, I want that to touch 1,000 lives. If I'm able to give $10,000, I want it to touch 10,000. Because I know this, and God did something neat, ladies and gentlemen. When I got to talk to Jeremiah yesterday, he had just gotten back and obviously catching up on sleep. I basically got a scripture in my heart, and I didn't know it's the same scripture that you and Amanda had been given, and so this isn't a one-shot deal, and I'll let you share that because I think that's a neat thing, because I intend, and I'm just saying this for my sake and for the people out there listening, I intend to stay active in prayer and in financing this thing, because look, Jeremiah, all of us in the United States, we don't know how long we've got. And in the name of the living God, I can tell you this, I think it was God's intervention in my life to show me that there comes a day of reckoning for the Christians. This isn't a guilt trip, but I remember standing before Jesus, having been translated to the judgment seat of Christ, barely understanding the theology by it, and having the Lord Jesus himself look down from his alabaster throne, the judgment seat of Christ, and saying to me, Steve, why when I've given you so much have you done so little? I hung my head and I said, Lord, give me another chance. And obviously he did, and why I'm bringing that up is this. I'm not interested, and I want to say, I'm speaking from my heart now, I'm not interested in putting another coat of paint on a building. I'm not interested in having a brick in somebody else's foundation. I'm not interested in anything but lives now. I'm not interested in anything but souls. And I've been like this for a long time, but what you've taught me, Jeremiah, is the fact that God is going to use, even in the insufficiencies, if we're willing, he will bring that which is necessary to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Jeremiah, when I say recuperates, that's not a good word, reconnoiters. And obviously he's got a wife. And how old's your little one now?
He just turned 1.
Yep. So, I want people to understand this. And I got to tell you something, Jamie, God bless you. When Jamie first contacted me by email, which I forwarded to Jeremiah, he's already said that, there was something in Jamie's email that was mind-blowing. The guy, and I've never met him, but I intend to meet him, and Jeremiah, I said this, and I mean this, I am believing God for the ability to wash your feet, and you won't be able to say no. And the same thing with Jamie and each one of your team members as God enables it, because the scripture said, how blessed are the feet of him who bring good news, okay? And I say that because, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know from one day to the next. King David said, teach me to number my days, Lord, that I won't trespass against you. And so I want to be as actively involved in making a difference. And you know what I've learned, Jeremiah? The greatest feeling in the world is helping those who could never help you, who there's no way to pay you back, and you don't help them for the payback. In America, giving was always related to a tax deduction, and I got news for you. That sucks. Forgive my language. The bottom line is that, what you guys are doing, what you're yet to do, and again, tell me kind of now, if you would, and tell the listeners where you're at that was phase 1, okay? Phase 2, and I got to tell you, when the wind blows, you go with the flow, okay? And the wind of God is blowing, and God will bless the Kurds because they stepped in. It's an amazing thing to me how little the West thinks see human life, yet, and it's true, Kurds they don't have the wealth of the oil nations and everything, and they've been hammered in history by everybody. So what's interesting is that, talk about a group of individuals, and God bless them, God bless their generals, God bless their politicians. When they have so little, yet they fight, and I got to tell you something. The shame of the United States will become historical over this. You mark my words. It's not a curse. It's just a true statement. And as God continues to reveal the true state of what's going on over there, because he promised there's nothing that's been hidden that isn't going to be made known. I think people, I'm asking you, those of you who, and I'm only saying this, I want to make this clear. I know some of you are just holding on for dear life. That's not who I'm talking to. You know, by the grace of God, I pray for seed for you. I pray, but I'm just saying, for those who are frustrated like me, who have been burned out for 20, or I guess in my case, 40 years of going to church, actually 30 years, please get behind something. And before you do, before you throw money at anything, say, Lord, is this where you want me to be involved? Because once you give your money, your heart will follow. And I got to share that. Jesus said it. I'm not, making up new theology. And that's the greatest. And this is something interesting. Jesus didn't die for anybody's foreign policy. He died for his creation that was absolutely, how should I say this, defamed by the powers of hell and darkness. And in the midst of blood, in the midst of gore, in the midst of war, in the midst of some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in modern history, yet God has a ram in the bush, and that's simply meaning the Lord has provided and will provide. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll post again Jeremiah's address, but I'm asking those of you who can, those of you who are frustrated like me, those of you who believe in tithing and in offerings, I do, to stand behind this word, because, again, the greatest joy I've ever experienced in any giving, in any tithing, is knowing that the Lord is multiplying that in people's lives. Jeremiah, what was the outcome of that little girl? The one, was it a little girl that you were holding in your hands? Did she live?
Yeah. No, she passed away. And it was heartbreaking.
Oh man, that had to tear your heart out.
Yeah, that was part of the original Shebek camp that we went to, and when we first saw her, she looked like she was dead already, but we saw that, she was struggling to breathe, and the next few days we went back, she was at the hospital, which we thought was good, and then we went back again, and she ended up being back, and she was just looking worse than ever, and she was probably 7 months old, and she might have weighed, 9 pounds, 10 pounds. She was just pale white, and all we could do was anoint her and pray over her, which the parents were more than willing to let happen, and unfortunately the next day we went back and she had passed away in the night. So it was heartbreaking, but with those heartbreaking stories, at the same camp there was a young man who was brought to the Lord. He was saved, and that's just mind-blowing to me, because of the cultural divide and everything. He spoke a good amount of English, and we believe that I saw this, I don't know what you want to call it, dream, vision, whatever. We were praying for these people, and there was just this closed door, and everything that we were doing and praying, the door, it just kept bouncing off the door over and over again. And then I saw this key, and the key went in and opened the door, and the key was the young man that was saved. And I didn't know that he was saved until later. I said, I was telling the group of people that we were working with, I saw this key, and it was this young man. His name's Mustafa, and they're like, he was just saved last night. He professed, the Lord Jesus, and asked him to save him, come into his heart. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just absolutely amazing that the Lord would communicate to his people and just show that, and that, out of death comes, there's life, and I don't believe it's just life for that one young man. I believe that entire tribe is going to be saved as a result of him coming to the Lord. And just prior to that, a couple of weeks prior to that, there was a young boy with a clubbed foot who his father brought up. He couldn't even walk, and the team was able to pray for him. And it was like about 2 days after I got there, the kid came up, and basically the father brought him up and showed him running. He was running. It was a supernatural, miraculous healing of the Lord. And, it's not like things are happening, 5 times a day, 10 times a day constantly, but the seeds are there, and we're starting to see the blooming of the fruit of his Holy Spirit and his supernatural healing on these people, and it's just absolutely amazing.
What's phase 2 now? What are your plans? What are you believing for? Okay. And again, when you sent the email, you can buy everything over there except what? The compresses?
Yeah, the tourniquets. So, like I said, we're trying to build aid kits. We've assembled like 300 so far for the Peshmerga, because the door's been open to actually go and train their frontline troops on how to do basic combat trauma first aid. Basically, it's blood stopping. That's the key, is to stop the blood, and then also if there's a chest wound, occlusive dressings and stuff. But we can get the majority of all the pressure bandages, the occlusive dressings, all of that, the gauze over in Iraq at the local medical bazaars, and it's pretty cheap over there. But the one thing that we can't get that many of the soldiers had never even seen before were tourniquets. So basically we're trying to get donations to buy bulk tourniquets and then actually bring them over either in trunks as we return, because we're planning to go back. Toby and Katie are still there, and then we're planning on hopefully having another team, maybe if more people go back and do more. But phase 2 is possibly establishing an actual organization over there. What we're doing right now, and Amanda's blog is fightthegoodfight91.com, and that's just been doing great. People have been finding updates and everything on what's been going on, but we're actually looking at starting a nonprofit of our own, because we've been working under the umbrella of this other relief organization. They've been amazing, but we're looking at potentially being able to set up our own organization over there, and possibly having basically one here and one over there to do the best that we can to help the Peshmerga, to help the refugees in any way possible. And as of right now, the main need is the tourniquets for the kits, for the aid kits. So we're working on, like I said, getting those in bulk and bringing them over, or possibly just having them shipped over.
Share the difference in price, what they sell for versus what you can get them for, and basically how many kits do you want? I always find that if I can ask the Lord, I say, Lord, and here's how I do it, and I mean, this is just me, and I'm not saying you have to adopt it, but if I have a need, like, let's say I see a need for 1,000, let's say, tourniquets, then I say, Lord, because of that's what I see, but I don't see what you see. Give us whatever is necessary for the amount of tourniquets. So let's just say this. Let's say God touches somebody's heart tonight, and I pray He touches a lot of hearts. I mean, how many kits? What would a complete kit cost? And let's say, how many would they be? How many would you like to see? I'm just talking about, right now for the troops and stuff.
Right. Let's see. Depending on the price, including the shipping for the tourniquets and everything, they range from, like, the tourniquets themselves, we can potentially get them as cheap as $6 a piece, but the shipping, because it's coming from a long ways away, is like, it's like $3,600. So it works out to right around $15 to $20 for each kit. I guess I'd say 15 to 25, depending on what medical supplies we're able to get in country and everything. So $15 to $25 per kit, and the initial goal, I would like to do 5,000 kits for the soldiers. And the only reason I come up with that number is, like, I was in the Marine Corps. We had 200,000 Marines. There's 200,000 Peshmerga. Basically, their entire military is the same size as the Marine Corps. And you take about 10% of that, typically, is an actual fighter who's on the front lines. So say there's 20,000 actual fighters. Well, if we can get 5,000 kits assembled and ready, then that means hopefully, we can get one for every 4 soldiers. And that would be absolutely outstanding. In the American military, we have one for every soldier, one for every Marine, or actually multiple ones, because if yours gets messed up, you can go grab another one. We don't understand how blessed we are. But if we could get one for every 4 over there, that would be amazing.
Then let me ask you this about food. Is food available with the money to feed the refugees?
Yes, the food situation has been fairly good. The Kurdish people they're amazing, and they're very generous. So, there have been many times when we've been out helping refugees, and a truck pulls up, and it's some wealthy Kurdish man who just wants to give food to the refugees, and he's got a truck full of food, a truck full of grapes or something, or somebody pulls up and just starts handing out money here and there every once in a while. So, the generosity of these people, it's mind-blowing. Obviously, there's 500,000 or more refugees, so they can't help everybody, but every now and then, we've seen that, and it's been amazing. So when there has been a need for the food, yes, we've been able to pass that out, but it's been pretty good. The majority of the need is, medical treatment for the refugees, and honestly, if they could get some kind of counseling, my wife's heart is for that right now too, to just even be able to talk and pray with them about what they went through, and that we've been able to do a little bit of that. But I'd say the immediate medical need is medical. The immediate need would be medical for the refugees. But just like I said, the generosity of the Kurdish people are amazing, and they've been able to help out with a lot of the basic necessities, a lot of the food and water and stuff like that. So we've actually been able to focus on things other than that mostly, which is pretty incredible.
when you told me about their generosity, immediately I thought, give and it shall be given unto you, good measure pressed down, with what measure you give. And that's amazing, because you're talking about something. You're talking about selflessness, and you're talking about a very amazing, almost, I would call it hospitality, but it goes beyond that. So given what's going on, I think it's just, how do I say this? It is so much the Lord that, again, give out your website, because, again, I want people to know that, and here's one thing that I know about Jeremiah. The deal is I can tell you this, I have to twist his arm, and this is only saying this because I know you, okay, and I'm your friend, but I'll tell it like I see it. The bottom line is that I've never seen him take his needs before everyone else's needs are met. Amanda had what I would call computer seizure. What did she go through? 3 or 4 computers, and she was apologizing to me because she couldn't get the updates up. I don't know. I don't know. It was at least 3 computers. Well, somebody, I don't know, maybe Amanda got her thing and gave her a brand new an iPad just because they didn't use it.
Yeah,
and
so was amazing.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it was just absolutely amazing. I really feel like that was the enemy, coming against what she's been doing back here, because she's the most amazing person that I've ever met in my life, and she's the most capable, just godly, wise woman, and I'm just so blessed to even know her, let alone have her as my wife. But for her back here, just the things that she's been doing logistically to have everything work out so that we can focus on helping these refugees, and she's been focusing on fundraising and working with you and updating the website and everything with a 1-year-old and no sleep at night, and then all these computers crashing one after another, and it was just, I know that was the enemy coming against her. And so I mean, honestly, one thing that anybody who's listening to this could pray for would just be my wife, and just protection over her and blessing over her.
And share with people too. She just got bit by a black widow spider.
Yeah.
And Amanda has fought. Why don't you say it? I mean, she's fought immune suppression, and I mean, God's given her victory. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to really put these guys on your prayer list, because again, they're on the front lines. And I explained Jeremiah. I explained you to somebody today. You'll appreciate this. I said Jeremiah is a guy that deep. You see the surface level of the water, and it's really smooth. You're probably the most I would say this, you don't get easily excited, but man, I know you're going 8 million miles an hour underneath the surface of the water. That's a compliment. So, I'm telling you this, he prays about stuff, and again, Jeremiah, I'm just blessed to be able to know that you guys are doing now, because I'm going to get emails, and you'll probably get emails. If there are people that are, believers in the supernatural power of God, and the military, they have military active duty training, share kind of what the requirements are, and if there are doctors that are retired that want to go, military doctors or whatever, there are people that would go, and in lieu of being able to go, if you have the ability to help them. I talked to one of my friends today who's, in multiple sclerosis, very sick. He asked me to pray for him. He's going to have to go in the hospital again, and the man's battling for his life. God bless you, Lloyd. And the deal is that he helped you guys. He gave $500. Wow. So the thing is that, I just got an email, and I want to share this. This is from, I don't think he'll mind, is Rob in Michigan. He said, I am envious of what these blessed folks have done. Where can I send 25 of these? And he's asking, and I just sent this to you, your email, but he's looking at tourniquets and everything else. So here's the thing, though. I think this is a true statement. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when people send you money, you've already looked and you know the best places to get stuff. So isn't that the easiest way? And it's not that, again, ladies and gentlemen, you have to twist Jeremiah's arm. You have to twist Amanda's arm. I mean, and I'm just going to say this. I said, you go get a computer, Amanda, and you send me the bill, because I could tell she's so weary. You know how I knew she was up late? I was up late, and I'm seeing her posting and sending me, I think, an apology at 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought, that is not going to be the case. But by the grace of God, the Lord used someone else to do it. And I'm not saying, I'm just saying this. If each one will do what they can, people will be, at the end of the day, going, wow, look what the Lord has done. Isn't that a fair statement?
It absolutely is a fair statement. And like I said, I can't give enough thanks to Amanda and to you, just for the work you guys have been doing back here. Because, yes, some people are called to go and do these things physically overseas and are able to do that, and others are called to support financially, others are called to support logistically, and that's the amazing thing about the body of Christ working together. And I'm asking people to stand with us, just like it says in Ephesians, having done all to stand. The time is over. I've battled it in my life. The lukewarmness, the Church of Laodicea, that's us. And we need to stop that. We need to be able to get up and actually make a difference for the Lord and stand up for His kingdom. And, it shouldn't be our motivation, but standing for Him, you'll be rewarded for it. And I know that's the case with you, Steve, and thank you again for all your help. And, so the website is Fight the Good Fight 91, as in Psalm 91, fightthegoodfight91.com. And we've looked up the prices for the best prices and worked out deals with companies to do, get the most good and are able to buy things in country because it's so expensive to ship it over. So we're mainly focused on the tourniquets right now, and hopefully we can get our own organization, like I said, set up over there, a nonprofit NGO working with the Kurdish government. That's what we're working towards. That's phase 2. And like you said, if there's people who want to help, they can basically get a hold of us on the website. And the training, the tactical training, the combat medicine, doctors and nurses, that stuff is so incredibly useful, and that's obviously what we're looking for. But the main thing above all that training is solid, grounded character in Christ Jesus, and that's, I guess that's what I have to say about that part of it. But
thank you. And Jeremiah, I look forward to seeing you and Amanda and your little person next week, the Lord willing. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I am so grateful for what the Lord has done. Jeremiah, thank you. Because so many people are frustrated with not being able to help, and you guys provided a vehicle to help. God bless you, my brother, and I'll see you next week.
Bless you, Steve. Thank you.
Bless you, Steve.
Bye-bye, Doug. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Steve. God bless. Jeremiah, stay right there for a moment if you can.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us, as you just heard with Steve, Jeremiah Farrell, and his website, fightthegoodfight91.com. It's linked off of Hagmann and Hagmann.com. And I just want to, the reason I wanted you just to stay for a second is because this is so amazing what we just heard for the last hour. Here you are, and folks, you can read about the team, about what you can do, about what's being done, about the mission. It's all laid out at fightthegoodfight91.com. Jeremiah, just to be clear, you are working as a diplomatic protection specialist for the past couple of years. You were on numerous deployments in Iraq, trained numerous tactical areas in trauma medicine and so on. You got out and went back. Is that the because we have a large segment of our audience who really doesn't know about this. I know that Steve knows and his readers know, but a large portion of our audience doesn't know. But you went back because you saw the need to help these people. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been, like I was saying before, just incredibly blessed with my military career. And, the deployments I've been on, just received lots of incredible training that at the time I didn't realize it, but now I kind of realize that obviously for the times that are coming to our own country, it's going to be valuable, and I believe the Lord's been instilling it in my life and in others' lives to be able to, basically be warriors for the end times, spiritually and physically. And so yeah, after I got out of the Marine Corps, I started doing diplomatic security over in Afghanistan, and I wanted to ensure that was the Lord's will, because there's no part of me that wants to be away from my wife and child. They are my priority, and I love them so much, and it's painful every day that I'm away from them. But we both felt like it was of the Lord for me to go over and work in Afghanistan. And the crazy thing is, I got amazing, incredible training over there that basically refined everything that I learned in the Marine Corps. TCCC, the tactical combat casualty care, the stuff that's based off of the special operations debriefs. We're constantly training that over and over again. All of our combat skills, QB, from rifles and pistols, everything else. I got that training working that I did.
It doesn't, Jeremiah?
Point that you could better and be better with our child and opportunity. We talked about it, and we given certain skills that could help. I mean, it help, and you have to hear not to do something.
Okay, Jeremiah, I got to tell you something here. That the equipment, the devil must be really working overtime to block you. Every fifth or sixth word is only coming through, my friend. I'll tell you what we'll do. If you can just listen just for a second here. Hang on for a second and listen. What we're going to do, we've already done this on the left-hand side of our website, folks, hagmanandhagmann.com. Is, of course, Jeremiah's website, fight91.com. Jeremiah, we'll have you back on. Don't try to talk because it's going to come through as scrambled garbage, and we apologize for that. But we're going to have you come back on, give us regular updates. But I just want to say thank you so very much for doing what you do. This is really ground-level trench spiritual and physical warfare, and of course the enemy doesn't like it, and we can see that now. But Jeremiah, we're going to cut you loose now. I just want to say God bless you. May God keep you and your wife and every member of your team safe. Thank you for coming on our program and sharing what you did. God bless you, my friend. And I apologize about the audio difficulties, but boy, I'll tell you, we're being messed with in a big way. Jeremiah, God bless you. God bless your family. God bless your mission. Thank you for coming on. Wow, folks, that was an incredible first hour, and that was Jeremiah Farrell, thegoodfight91.com, assembling a team to go over to not just minister, but to provide actual physical support and help, assistance to those who need it. Now I'm choking up here. It's just such a I mean, think about that, folks, and think about our government, what we've done to cause this mess, and what the renegade in chief has done to exacerbate, not necessarily cause, but to exacerbate this mess. I don't even want to make this a political issue. It's not. This is a human issue. This is a good versus evil issue. All right, with that,
we're a wonderful first hour, and we apologize to Jeremiah. Once about halfway into when you were talking, it almost sounded like a rotary phone. Your voice was just going no words were good here.
Is he still on with us?
Yeah, he is still on. I don't know if he can hear us or not.
Wow. Okay.
But Jeremiah, I'm going to put you on mute, and you're free to hang in there and listen. And gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Friday, September 19th, 2014. We do still have with us Jeremiah Farrell. I'm going to bring him back on because we did get rudely cut off there by a sound distortion issue. Jeremiah, are you back with us?
Can you hear me okay?
It's better. It's still a little choppy.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, my house phone started malfunctioning, so I gave you a call back on my cell phone. I hope that's okay.
Well, it's no coincidence we have sound issues and audio interference problems always when important and guests come on, and it was just odd the way that happened. It really your voice started to sound like a dial tone, the way it was distributing your audio. Very systematic with no words, just sounds. But it's a little choppy now, but we can still hear your full words. So we do apologize.
No, it's no problem on mine. I'm just blessed to be able to talk to you guys at all. So.
All right. Here, I'm bringing you on, Dad. There you go.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Jeremiah, let me ask you about ISIS. Well, first of all, how long have you been back? I just, and you're free to go anytime. Obviously, I just kind of want to learn a little bit more about the situation as it unfolds and as we see it on the news. Let me just start out with asking you how long you've been back since your last tour over there, well, your last mission through Fight the Good Fight 91.com.
I just got back on Tuesday, actually. So,
wow. Okay.
just a few days, and I came back to basically organize things at home and be able to go back over and stay for a longer period of time. We're only going to stay for a little over a month initially, do the most we could, and then pray about staying longer. And we just felt like that's what we're supposed to do, is stay longer. And I just decided to come home a little early because it seemed like there was a little bit of God's grace for that. And so I did. We're going to square things away at home and then basically go back for an undetermined period of time because there's just such a great need over there. And, we just want to help all that we can.
Gotcha. And I must have 24 emails from listeners wanting to know where to help folks. Send emails or visit fightthegoodfight91.com, and there's a link off of our website there, and you can contact the team directly. Jeremiah, the threat posed by ISIS over there right now, is it increasing, or is where you're working at? And this is another question where people are asking, is this going to become insurmountable, or are you going to be able to weather the ISIS threat?
Honestly, I really believe, at least recently, that it's been declining. Ever so slightly. Like, we would go and meet with the Peshmerga, and they'd tell us about the latest victory that they had against ISIS in this city or that city. And I think that's a huge morale thing, because the main thing I believe that drives ISIS and basically fuels them is the fear of everybody else. So, they might have 200 ISIS fighters that go into a town of 200,000 people, but they'll be able to displace all 200,000 of them because of the fear that they carry with them, because they're so extreme in what they do. But honestly, recently I felt like it's been declining ever so slightly. The main thing that I'm concerned with, and that I believe that the Kurdish government is concerned with, is not so much a full-on frontal attack against Kurdish cities such as Erbil or other ones like that. It's more of a potential slow seeping in of ISIS forces into the city, and then from there functioning as an insurgency, like the U.S. has been fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq for years. And that, honestly, is the more damaging thing that they could potentially do versus a full-on frontal attack. They wouldn't be able, in my mind, to defeat the Kurdish forces in conventional warfare because they're smaller, and the Kurdish forces are they're much larger. But if they went under the radar and started doing IEDs and roadside bombs and things such as that would be more dangerous. And they have started that. There was one vehicle explosion that they took credit for while I was there. It was a few miles away, and everybody survived, which was good. But that would be the main threat that we'd be concerned with.
I understand. Okay. And I've got an email here from JKL listening from Dallas, Texas, listening live. Thank you, JKL, for this this question. Essentially the genesis or the nugget of this question is this: what do people here in the United States, what do we need to know about what's taking place over there that we're not getting, that we're not being told by our media? What's being censored out, or what's being muted down? Is there anything that you could tell us from your firsthand experience that we're being told by our media? I might anger some people. I don't know, but I'm going to quote one of the interpreters that we have. He was formerly ISIS
he wasn't violent, militant wing, but he was one of the political supporters of ISIS before he got saved, and he started working with us, or with the organization we're working with, which is absolutely amazing. His story is just amazing in and of itself. But he said that the key thing about ISIS and organizations like them is that they are, the more someone divulges into, I guess you'd say, the teachings of Muhammad and Islam, the more educated they are into that, the more that they want to actually replicate those teachings and replicate Muhammad's life. And the reason why you've got ISIS fighters taking 6-year-old brides for your 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old girls and making them their wives is because that's something that Muhammad did. And the reason why they're trying to conquer and convert everyone, and if they won't convert and kill, well, that's because they're the founder of their belief. That's what he did. So the main thing I think that the media is missing in all of this is they just kind of label them as, well, these people are extremists. And what this individual told me, is he came from that, and he said, well, yes, they're extreme, but they're really just following what they believe, if that makes sense, and the teachings of their founder.
Yeah. They're really not extreme or radical. They're orthodox, perhaps. Orthodox beliefs based on the Quran.
Right.
And I know the Council on American Islamic Relations listens to this broadcast. They record this broadcast. Hey, too bad. I mean, let's tell it like it is, and that is like it is. So there you have it. Before we cut you loose here in this, before the end of this segment here, Jeremiah, boy, I mean, there's so many different directions we can go. With your military acumen, your military prowess, we here in the United States hear about the threat of ISIS. Your combat experience, everything you know, does ISIS pose a threat here to us in America?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the main things as well, to answer your email's question, that we should understand about that, is it's not that they're over there, they're over here too. And that's one of the things that the generals, when we would speak to them about, about what they're doing and how they're fighting on the front lines, we would tell them thank you, because they're not fighting for just the Kurdish people. They're fighting for the entire world. They're standing up against evil and putting that line down and saying, no, we're not going to give you any more access. We're going to stop you right here. And that's across the board. The amazing thing to me was across the board, no matter which general or military or government representative we spoke to, they all knew, and they would all say in one way or another, that we're not just fighting for Kurdistan and for the refugees. We're fighting for all of humanity. And I think people need to understand that it's not just something that's isolated over there. They're over here. They're in our country. They're taking pictures, from their iPhone and putting them up on their websites, and sending them out, tweeting them and whatnot. They're over here. And the thing is, I mean, I've heard a while back that, in Israel, there's an armed guard for every 10 or 20 students. I mean, there's metal detectors everywhere. Even in Kurdistan, when you go into the mall, you go through a metal detector. And in America, our security is so lax because we don't think anything can happen to us internally like that. And in reality, we need to be wise and understand that the threat is huge and that they're already over here. They're just waiting to strike. So, I mean, for me, the public schools, the malls, everything else where there's no security, the transportation from trains and buses and whatnot, those are huge targets. And that's what we just need to learn from history of what's happened in Israel and other nations and even in Britain. And we just need to realize, if we don't understand and study history, then we're doomed to repeat it or allow it to happen to us. So we just need to be very concerned about all those things.
Okay, I understand that, certainly, and we have to know that the threat is here, and we've investigated the threat as well in our capacity as investigators, and we understand that there is a huge threat to our security here in the United States, and the fact that these paramilitary trained fighters are in fact here in this country. So I get that. All right. I'll give you the floor. We got about 7 minutes here left of this particular segment. Anything else that you want to tell us about Fighting the Good Fight 91.com, your mission, your team, your needs, anything that we didn't go over? The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, I guess I'd just like to share a couple of the stories of some of the people that have gravitated to working with the relief organization that we're working with over there, and to us, and what they've kind of had to go through, because their stories are amazing. I mean, one individual we work with, he was, I guess, the chief evangelist in Baghdad, which is kind of an interesting sentence if you think about it. But he was on the corner every day, passing out tracts and Bibles until he was arrested and thrown in prison. And then from there, he evangelized his prison guards, and into following Jesus. I mean, and that's somebody who we work with on a daily basis, and I'm so honored to be able to work with these men, because they show what it really takes to be a believer, the cost of being a disciple of the Lord. Like, we don't realize that in this country, and to see them just every day living and breathing and serving and helping, just absolutely, I don't know what else to say. It blows my mind, and I wish that I could. What I want to do is capture all their stories and then just share it with the people over here, because I mean, I've got this gentleman, he's the chief evangelist in Baghdad, he's working with us, and he won't let me carry my own bag, like I go to put it in the vehicle or whatever, and he, no, I got it, and I can't convince him to let me serve him, even though I try. It's kind of a battle between the two of us. But that's the kind of humility and the servanthood that he shows us. And then there's another individual over there who's working with us, and him and his best friend converted to Christianity from Islam. And his best friend's parents called him home. After they found out he converted, his parents kind of shunned him, but his best friend's parents called him home, and he thought, that's so cool. They're gonna open themselves to me, because they were shunning him, and they called him home, and then the family killed him. They shot him and killed him. And then he's there, and he doesn't know what to think. And then his family calls him, and it's like, come on home. So what's he supposed to do? But he does. He goes home, and they tell him that you have 3 years to change your mind, and then we're gonna kill you. And he knows they're not just saying that. It's the truth. Because look at what just happened to his best friend. And he's living with his parents and his family right now in their house. And they tell him, you have 3 years before we're going to kill you if you don't convert back to Islam. And that yet every day he's got a smile on his face. Every day he's out there helping us with refugees. Every day he's coming with, Bibles in the local languages to help us. He's interpreting for us. But God is good. But it's okay. It's all right. God's got a plan. If they kill me, then I'll die for Jesus. That's his mindset, and there's no box for that in America. And I just realized I wish that people would be shaken to the core by these stories. And we've got another individual who's working with us locally, and he was a police officer, and some Muslim extremists went into a local church where it was his province to basically be in charge and protect that area. And they basically took him hostage and started killing people. Like, killed a baby for crying. He walks in and he sees after it's all over, babies with holes in their heads, and all these people are killed. And then the government comes in, and it's the police government that he was working with locally in Iraq. It wasn't Kurdistan. The police government comes in and just kills everybody, the hostages, the bad guys, the extremists, everybody. He wipes the whole church clean because they don't want that whole issue coming out of what happened there. And through that, he was saved. And because he had a Bible that he kept with him that somebody gave him who was trying to evangelize him, and he just kept it for the heck of it. And he looks in there and he says, he sees the scripture where it says people will come and kill you and persecute you and think that they're doing the will of God. He saw that and he was like, oh my gosh, that's what these extremists are doing, and they think it's the will of God to kill these people. And that moment he became a believer in Jesus, and then his family disinherited him and cast him out. And now he's over here working with us, and he can't find a wife because his name is Islamic, and he's a second-class Christian because he wasn't born a Christian. And everybody treats him second-class in that culture if you weren't born a Christian, because they have a severe mistrust of converts because they've been burned so many times by people who say they've converted but haven't really, and then have killed people in the church. So it's such a hard situation for him. But they love Jesus, and they always have this amazing, optimistic attitude. And I want people to understand that if you're a follower of Christ, it's more than just words, and it's just amazing what they're able to do. And
so much to really, from my perspective, so much more to learn, so much more to understand. the story about the young man being murdered by his own family for converting to Christianity. I do suspect that happens more frequently than we're told. And I do suspect that, well, it's already happened here in America, and I think that the numbers will begin to rise as the spirit of darkness does take over our country. But Jeremiah, we've never met in person. I don't believe we have. But I'll tell you, I've heard Steve talk about your mission, and very highly. I feel in a way that I know you. More so than you know me, but I feel like I know you, and I certainly endorse what you're doing, and we support what you're doing, my friend. I just want you and your wife, your team, to be careful in your needs, along with your donate button is on your website, or on the website that we have linked, fightthegoodfight91.com, just so people can go there and either make donations or see what you're in need of. For example, brewer's yeast packets you've got here, and such, things like that, MP3 players and so on. You'll be adding to that or keeping that current, then, I suspect, correct?
Yeah, the brewer's yeast is helping nursing women to volumize their milk. My wife's really into natural treatments, and she knows that can help the nursing mothers with their infants. The MP3 players are to play, the Bible in Arabic or Kurdish, because a lot of people don't read over there, so it's hard when you pass them a Bible and they can't read it. So there's many different needs, things that we're asking donations for and whatnot to help out, but we'll continue to update that. And, Mr. Hagmann, I just really appreciate your time and your heart and your ministry, so thank you.
Well, we appreciate you as well. All right, Jeremiah, thank you so much for your extra time that you spent with us. God bless, and you take care. We'll be in touch again, certainly, perhaps off air. All right, folks, we're going to take a very short break. We'll be back on the other side. Welcome back to a follow-up Friday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Again, this is the 19th day of September 2014. Thank you for that mid-hour reset, if you will. We did reset some audio equipment, and hopefully we're coming in louder and clearer in this case. I just want to say it's interesting when we have specific guests on, and we were talking to Russ Dizdar about this yesterday. Joe and I were, and I can't remember, Joe, if we mentioned this on air or not, about how the devil, in fact, appears, or Satan, the forces of darkness, do appear to take dominion over electronics even. And I just want to, if I can, share something with you that Russ Dizdar had written or had provided. And it's actually, I'm going to paraphrase something that he's written, all right? And for those who are planning on attending the conference in Chicago next weekend, it's my understanding that is sold out. So if you have your tickets, great. If not, boy, we apologize. I think this is the fifth time or fifth year in a row it's been sold out, or fourth year in a row it's been sold out. So if, in fact, you have your tickets, we'll see you there. Russ is gracious enough just to give us a little table in the corner, I think in the entryway of the hotel, just as kind of a meet and greet area, so we're out of the way of the flow of traffic. So that's a great thing. But it's going to be a great conference, and this is going to be about satanic ritual abuse, satanic crimes, pretty heavy-duty stuff, and a lot of law enforcement there as well. But something that Russ had written, referencing Revelation 16, where it says, "Then I saw three evil spirits that looked like frogs that came out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophets." And Russ talks about the sight of a pink head that burned itself into his mind. It happened the very moment that he saw it, and that image had never left him. He writes, "It has fueled my passion to fight radical evil and the devastating rituals that practitioners use in growing and unprecedented numbers." Now, folks, what he's saying here is the fact that the dark ritual satanic abuse is growing. Now listen to this. During a law enforcement training on advanced occult satanic crimes, a crime scene was shown to us on video. A girl, most likely a runaway, was drawn into a party. She was taken by force and ritually abused and sacrificed. Now, this is going to be a little bit squeamish for some people, or this might cause some people to be squeamish. This teen girl's facial and head skin was peeled off, and then they cut off her head. The crime scene video picture only revealed what was left, just her skinless, hairless head, only a pink head. And he writes how much he hates radical evil. Now think about that, folks. Think about being really skinned alive, having the skin of your face removed, having your hair removed, and then burned, and pre-death, pre-mortem injuries. It's unbelievable. And he states that he's seen a number of ritual sites. He's viewed hundreds of crime scene photos and read and listened to hundreds of accounts of modern-day satanic rituals. All this since the 1980s, which really it was the impetus for him to track and investigate and expose this radical satanic ritual abuse. Now, just very quickly, and I'll just go over this and I'll hand it back to Joe, but he talks about the past and notes that one only has to study the dark rituals of the past to see the gruesome accounts of ungodly human sacrifice and devastation. And, of course, you've heard accounts of these sacrifices reported around the world in places like some are China, England, Chile, Ireland, and more. Two of the most renowned sites would be the Mayan and Aztec civilizations. This is going back now centuries, if not millennia. Though many have fallen for the view of a quieter, gentler Maya, he writes, the truth is modern-day stories, documentaries, and spiritual revelations of 2012 Mayan prophecies. And you've heard him talk, too, about, and I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly now, the Quetzalcoatl, the blood-soaked temples and grounds of these ancient sites. But he writes, one report is that there were 136,000 human skulls on racks, body parts, all lined up as trophies, if you will, of ancient Aztec blood sacrifice to old demon gods they feared. Another report is the agonizing ritual slaughter of living human beings by Mayan priests, and some were stretched out on, those old racks, where they stretch bodies out, only to have their insides ripped out by demon-appeasing, wife-wielding priests. And he goes on to talk more about the modern-day movie makers and book authors like Daniel Pinchbeck's 2012, The Return of the, again, I'm going to have to slaughter this word, Quetzalcoatl. I'm not sure how Russ pronounces that, but anyway, they seek to reveal a sparkling spiritual Mayan civilization of the past that may help bring about a return of those days and a return of a god or god-man, meaning Nephilim, once worshipped. Now, the present. Let's move on to the present, because this is what's going on today, and I feel this is very important to share. Occult historian James Webb declared in his work, and his work is The Occult Establishment, that the second largest proliferation of occult literature was released back in the 1960s here in the United States. Now, the first was unleashed in pre-Nazi Germany. But go back and think about the 1960s for a moment. We had the Beatles, the anti-war movements, if you will, the sexual revolution, Eastern mysticism, which made a really huge return, and Paul McGuire talks about this, the 1969 start of the modern Church of Satan. That, in tandem with the release of self-proclaimed Dark Pope Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible, that was the decade of the 60s. And the Satanic Bible, by the way, really spelled out for many sex, destruction, and even death rituals. The 60s was only the first dark steps of an even darker path of left-handed rituals, if you will. Many of these dark rituals of Aleister Crowley or Babylon working ritual by U.S. rocket scientist Jack Parsons helped open the doors to modern rise of dark rituals and manifesting dark powers. In her book, and this is important to understand about the present, in her book, Crime Warps, author Georgette Bennett predicted that the 1990s would be a dark decade with a primary rise in satanic and occult ritual crime. Well, it's interesting that law enforcement agent Tom Wedge unleashed his book, The Satan Hunter. His book gave local police the tools to uncover, investigate, and seek trace evidence at satanic ritual crime scenes. But I'll tell you something. Statistics are not being kept properly about this. Russ and I talked about this with Joe yesterday about the satanic crime scenes, and really this is a deep, dark secret that's being hidden. Folks, satanic crimes, satanic rituals, satanic ritual abuse, kidnappings, child sex, slave trafficking, all of this is on the rise. And if I may say, and I know Dave Hodges has written about this, and if you can go back to the Franklin cover-up, the Franklin Savings and Loan, Larry King, and think about that and multiply that exponentially. This is what we have right now in this country. But Holly Hector, a former hypnotherapist at Denver's Centennial Hospital, while working on the new satanic ritual abuse ward, which is part of the psych ward, by the way, who said that there were, by the early 1990s, listen to this, 2.4 million diagnosed cases of severe satanic ritual abuse that included trauma-based mind control, which is the splitting of the human personality to create, alter, or cause subpersonalities who could be programmed and demonized. This is what Russ Bizdar works with, and this is what we're seeing here as Christians. It's pretty rough stuff. As we look at Joe, I'm telling you, this is really rough. And as we look at the more recent things, there was a rise of satanic bands like Slayer in their album South of Heaven, whose song Spill the Blood gave invitation to hundreds of thousands of our young people to actually cut themselves, to spill their blood and to embrace the demonic. And there were other satanic bands that were far worse. There's a book called Lords of Chaos. If you're interested, you can read that book, other works such as Satan Wants You, Cults That Kill, Painted Black, and a new vital study, Program to Kill. Those are just a few, just so you can grasp the unprecedented rise of Satanism, of dark ritual crimes, of satanic abuse, and so on. This is absolutely incredible. It would seem that author Bob Rosio was right in his two watershed books, Hitler and the New Age. This is going back to Hitler now, where Bob Rosio coins a phrase, deception always leads to destruction, where he talks about the demon cult-given ideology of the Nazis, how that led to World War II and the millions dead. In his second book, whose title may explain the last 70 years, The Satanization of America. I'll close with this. In this current hour of the rise of Satanism, the world has even led the Russian National Security Director to declare this just 6 years ago, and I'll quote this. In 2008, Interior Ministry experts announced that Satanism was a greater threat to the country's national security than Islamic radicalism. Now, this is in Russia. The Catholic News Agency declared that the smoke of Satan is in the Vatican, and one Catholic priest records over 90,000 exorcisms, and even more, that Italy has over 8,000 satanic cults, with over 700,000 members. Now think about that in such a small nation. That's just absolutely incredibly beyond huge.
Yes, it is. And, we know that, and I've seen the FBI claims that there have been no murders attributed to actual Satanism. They put it into two categories. They say that, self-proclaimed Satanists are either one of two types of people. They're either kids or immature people who vandalize and do other mischievous things. And those who kill use their Satanism as an excuse for the killing. Therefore, they have zero statistics on any real SRA crimes, and they deny that those exist in a way that we understand they do. And it's interesting to see them make that distinction, because they're trying to cover up or manipulate the true gravity of that, what the SRA behavior entails.
Right.
And I mean, this is, what Russ talks about is how SRA victims are subjected to the worst kinds of trauma. And these traumas can be used to split personalities. I'm sure you've heard people say, or on TV shows when, they're in a terrible situation, unimaginable, that they have to take their mind to another place. This is how it happens.
You mentioned something, though, just moments ago, Joe, that about the secrecy, about the holding down, the holding away of information. According to Russ Dizdar, he believes that 95% of the rituals that have gone on and are going on currently are cloaked in satanic powers that keep these super secret and hidden. In Ezekiel chapter 8, which he recommends, as do I, that everyone does read, Ezekiel had no idea that there was this long-established Luciferian serpent worshipping going on right there in the city of God. It took a higher supernatural power, or actually the hand of God, to lead the biblical prophet to the cavern, into the cave, to witness what in God's sight was absolutely detestable. So it is this secret power of lawlessness, or Satan's supernatural operative power, as referenced in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, that was and still is behind the rise of the dark arts, rituals, ritual crimes, satanic ritual abuse, global manifestation of demonic activity. And one last thing, and this really struck me hard when I was when I heard this. There are two things, actually. The issue of weaponization of dark powers. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. In 2 Kings chapter 3, a demon-worshipping king from a demon-experienced nation was at war with Israel. All right, now think about this. This Moabite king was losing, so he, like an old military king, sent out 700 more soldiers to fight war, or to fight. The pagan nation was still losing, so what the king did was this. He wanted the upper hand. He wanted the advantage. So he took his son and sacrificed him on the wall, shedding his blood so that the demons would come. And come they did, by the way. The powers fell upon the Moabite warriors, moving them in a non-human enhanced frenzy. This really happened. I mean, this is documented. So these freshly demonized soldiers then beat Israel back and won for the day. That's right, won for the day. The Old Testament's revelation on satanic rituals is quite vast, and we need to restudy this to help us understand how the satanic supernatural secrecy, the satanic ritual growth, and the weaponizing of dark powers happen. Because in the future, biblical revelation on dark power rituals, dark rituals, we believe, Russ Dizdar believes, and we agree with him, this might be the most important study that we could get into. Getting the best cutting-edge information we possibly can about this will give us the upper edge. the devil is counting on us not to get this information, and we touched upon this last night with Paul McGuire when I had made the reference about the minister, the pastor, who said we really don't need to know, just God's grace is sufficient. Well, no, the playbook is necessary, so we know what we're fighting against. The coming rise of this global Babylon, and as I mentioned, coming in the three frogs of Revelation 16 and the phenomenon of the SRA, multiple personality disorder, they've got a role in the last days here. Jesus taught us that the first thing to look at as evidence of the last days and his coming is demonic deception. Now, that's described in Matthew 24. The Spirit of God cries out that there will be a massive wave of seducing spirits who will lead many astray and cause some to influence doctrines of demons. Now, just consult 1 Timothy 4, for example, if you want information on that. But if you look at the wide view of this, the wide view of the evolution of the satanic agenda, all you have to do is turn to 2 Thessalonians 2. Yeah, okay, let's say it together. Thessalonians 2.
Thessalonians.
Yeah, I can never pronounce that. I'm sorry, but the bottom line is look, just as there is no advance of the kingdom of God without his power, so there is no advance to the satanic agenda without the release and the use of real manifested dark power. That's in principle, that's what it is, and we have to fight this. It's interesting because there are so many numbers thrown out. In the 90s, I'd mentioned Holly Hector. She estimated that there were 2.4 million cases of satanic ritual abuse, or SRAs, victims turning up in psych wards. Dr. Colin Ross, Canadian psychologist and author of Project Bluebird, estimates that there may be up to 10 million cases in the U.S. and Canada. But add the numbers in England, Australia, Ireland, all of Europe, Russia, and so on, you're looking at over 40 million cases. And that's just the first generation of victims, meaning the first generation of victims from the 60s, okay, that I referenced earlier. So many are now counseling and helping the second generation, who are somewhere in perhaps around 40 years of age, and the third generation, who are in their 20s, early 20s, and the fourth, very young victims, anywhere between ages 1 through 10. But a need for better statistics. The total numbers are growing. They may be upwards of 100 million. And we have to understand, who these victims are, what they've gone through, how many satanic rituals have they experienced, and why are they being programmed and demonized. Perhaps that was my biggest issue. Why are they being programmed and with mind control and demonized? Why do they have assassin and sleeper subpersonalities that Russ Dizdar talks about? Why are they extremely knowledgeable in the practice of ancient dark rituals? These are the questions that Russ Dizdar asks, and certainly I'm behind him in this. The reality. Those questions will lead us to the reality that a massive work of satanic ritual and ritual abuse has been going on for the last half a century. And look, it's broader than anyone has ever even realized or even calculated. And Steve talks about this. We've talked about this. One of these victims, an intact satanic super soldier, after doing blood rituals, was engaged by officers, and Russ talks about this. I guess I said all that to say this. There are a lot of dark rituals that are taking place in America, in Europe, all over the world, and the rituals are growing. 500 million rituals, past and present, are assessed, believed to have been conducted to summon, receive, send, and ultimately manifest our powers on this side of the fence, or on this side of the veil, if you will. And the sheer number of these rituals is unprecedented. The growth is beyond calculation. If you can, just think about that, 500 million rituals done in the last half a century continuously. Is it any wonder that so many of us, so many victims, or just so many of us, have a feeling of, a growing feeling, I should say, that a great darkness is manifesting about us, around us, within us even, and something ominous and catastrophic is about to happen? We can read Ephesians 2, and that'll be explained. But if you feel it in the air, as many of us do, and if you agree that we are nearing the end of history, then the gravity of the end of days must be spoken about by pastors, by ministers, by people, by the people who don't want to speak about it. We must warn everybody of the impending danger and evangelize as we have never before evangelized. And we must ramp up our walk in Christ, knowing that no matter how dark, how evil, and how ugly, and how stinky it gets, we have a mission from the King of Heaven. And we have all the backing we need to keep reaching the world for Christ until the very last day. Look, we've got to become the most powerful and strong believer that we can. We've got to become a committed, powerful soul winner, and we've got to become powerful prayer warriors. That's what we need to do. And we're fighting a spiritual fight. We have to recognize the end of days as a spiritual fight as much as it is a practical fight. So that I wanted to share with you, and I think that that gives you an encapsulated vision of what Russ Dizdar fights on a daily basis, what we're seeing on a global level, and what we're fighting against on a spiritual plane as well as a physical plane. I do believe that we're going to see in our lifetimes this satanic spiritual manifestation, darkness, overtake our globe. If you feel it in the air now, I believe that we're not only nearing the end of the days, but I believe that we're going to be seeing more and more the veil being torn. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. We are seeing a lot of changes. The deception that is overwhelming in every aspect of our society, and every, whether it's entertainment or politics, finance, whatever it is, any authoritative forms are full of deception, misuse, perversion for selfish gain. It is every evil and agenda aside from helping people and being doing things that are right. I mean, that's out the window. We see just the most heinous acts, and most of them go unknown. You know, we talked a bit about the secret societies and their view on philanthropy, and how they believe that because of their generous giving, even though they're giving money that they have used or manipulated away from other people, stolen away from other people, and they have an abundance of stolen money just because they give, more money publicly than a lot of other organizations. They feel that, as I said earlier, they're above suspicion. This is from their own writings. But what we have is this, on a level right above us, from local politics, state politics, you have people who are in the position of somewhat authority. They have a good income and benefits, and they're making sure that their family's taken care of. Some, I'm sure, have evil aspirations. Others most likely just want to live a good life and make a good living, but are stuck into certain parameters of not being able to really go the distance because of
Joe, we're getting reports. Joe, I'm sorry. We're getting reports that you're really breaking up. Folks in the chat.
How do we know everyone else's ears aren't deceiving them?
Yeah, exactly. If we can, I'm not even sure if I'm looking at the chat or not. I'm not sure what I'm looking at.
Are you already hooked up?
It's already there, so go ahead and try that. Folks in the chat, can you just let me know? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. All right. Now, Joe, you're better now.
And the person in the chat who said we need to invest in new equipment, we've went through so much equipment, tried so many different things. Huge mixer, soundboards, new computers. This is a direct issue between Blog Talk Interface and their streaming of our audio.
Yeah, trust me, it's not. We've got all the equipment that we need and more. So and where we use it and change it up when necessary. But this is absolutely incredible, folks. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to take a top of the hour break. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. Please stay with us. We're going to try to once again do one more thing with our audio.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour on this Friday, September 19th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We had Steve Quayle on with Jeremiah Farrell. I thought that was right, but I wanted to check. Jeremiah Farrell in the first hour. We do apologize. We've been having some sort of technical difficulties, audio interferences during the show, hit and miss, and we're just going to continue to make sure we are broadcasting loud and clear. We're using a landline at the moment, so I want to make sure everybody out there can hear me and there is no distortion. Apparently there's none on our end because you haven't said anything, Dad. So
no, you're actually very good, and hopefully mine on it, which is connected through voice over internet, is well. So let's get into some news before anything else, because there is a lot of news that's important for us to get into, dissect into.
There is a lot of news.
Yeah.
Did we gather any of it? Did you gather it?
Yes, I did.
No, I'm kidding. I have it here. I want to start with this. Bombshell. Department of Homeland Security forced to admit that terrorists have been caught at the Texas border trying to cross into the United States. Now, folks, remember just a few days ago, the Homeland Security stated that no ISIS threat was at the border, as well as the FBI, and they were adamant about that. There was no clear or direct threat that there were terrorists crossing the border, no evidence to support that, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Well, in a new admission, they have been forced to admit that terrorists have been caught crossing or attempting to cross the border. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jen Johnson was caught off guard when being questioned about the situation at the southern border. Representative Chaffetz gave Secretary Johnson plenty of rope, and then the inevitable happened. The line of questioning began. And here's just a few quotes. Chaffetz was questioning Mr. Johnson. It says, Chaffetz started, "Since you took office, Secretary Johnson, on December 23rd, are you aware of any apprehensions of suspected or known terrorists who are trying to come into our country illegally?" Johnson replied, "That's an important question. Attempting to come into this country?" And Chaffetz came in and said, "Who came across our border illegally? Did you ever apprehend anybody who is a known terrorist, suspected terrorist, or anybody who had ties to terrorist organizations?" Johnson stated, "Sitting here right now, no specific case comes to mind. That doesn't mean there is none. Perhaps Director Comey can think of one. Sitting here right now, none comes to mind, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. Nor does it mean that there's no investigation into this." All right, that's the line of questioning that went on. But it says, then the congressman dropped the bomb. Not only did he explain to the secretary that there were in fact reports of 4 individuals with ties to terrorist organizations apprehended on 2 separate locations at the border, but he had information from DHS documents, statistics on immigration activities, stating that during 351 days of the fiscal year of 2014, 466,000 apprehensions of illegals took place.
So it's 500,000 roughly, and out of that, how many are listed as Islamic terrorists, radical Islamic terrorists, or just simply Islamic terrorists?
Now you're really cutting out. But this goes on to state that out of those numbers, 157,000 illegals got away, 142,000 individuals were turned back. The compilation of apprehensions represents people from 143 countries. Additionally, the sensors are that placed in locations primarily southwest recorded a jump in over 1 million hits from last year until now, and these are the shocking numbers, but even more alarming is that, according to the Government Accountability Office report mentioned by the congressman, there was only a 6% operational control of the border.
In other words, 94% of the border is just absolutely who knows, and of that 94%, or I would even say higher, probably closer to 98%, given the real numbers. How many? What has come through? What has come across? When you've got such a small percentage, a single digit, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they've got 10% coverage of the border, which we know is not true. But let's just say that they do. 90% of the border is left unchecked. That's the southern border. What about the northern border? We've had reports all over, and no one says anything about the northern border at all. Have you heard anything, any talk, any mention about the northern border? Of course not.
No, we have the NFL scandals going on with the full resources of the government dedicated to finding out if the commissioner reviewed some tape of some player in an altercation.
Yeah.
Have you heard the news? I mean, constantly. I cannot believe the amount of attention that I hear this getting on Fox News, on MSNBC. I mean, and it's still ongoing. And the reason I brought that up is because I wanted to get into that a little bit, not that situation with the NFL. And they're, I don't know how many players are in the NFL. There's 32 teams, hundreds of players and associates. They have a few incidents of domestic violence, and now they're basically saying the NFL is in trouble, and there's a war on women within the NFL, and it's all being politicized. I mean, you can't call the Redskins anymore because it's racist, and they're forcing the team to change their name. But we're going to sit here and forget about ISIS crisis. Forget about the homelessness, the unemployment, the suffering here in America. We're going to focus on the outside activities of the games, the Olympic Games or the Coliseum Games, or the what we have today are the sporting games, as they call them, all the same difference, distraction, circuses, to keep the minds of the masses stimulated.
Right.
And to hear on the news stations of the amount of coverage, you think you're listening to TMZ or a celebrity gossip report. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. And the amount of coverage that they give it and continue to give it tells me that there is a demand for it, that people keep asking about it, which shows how educated their interactive audience must be.
I'm going to provide a little bit of an update here to folks. You know that we have been working very, very hard on the Loretta Fuddy, the death of Loretta Fuddy. In case folks you don't know who she is, she was the director of the Hawaii Department of Health when the Obama long-form certificate of live birth was released to Obama's attorney and subsequently posted the following day, shown to Savannah Guthrie, and then posted as a PDF on the White House website. Well, Loretta Fuddy had met her alleged death in a small airplane crash. 9 people aboard. She was one of the
allegedly.
9. Yeah, allegedly. And we had, through an internet researcher, using the internet name Butter D. Zillion, who we've had on the program. She has, in fact, together, and because of you folks, because of you, the listeners, and I want to thank each and every one of you for what you've done. In fact, you had, through your individual small donations, which worked out real well, showed that we had, I don't like this word, but I'll use it anyway, standing or interest. There was public interest. Initially, the state of Hawaii decided that there was not enough public interest to warrant any type of response to Freedom of Information Act requests coming from or related to the Fuddy death, the death of Loretta Fuddy. The audience of the Hagmann Hagmann Report changed that based on the numbers that came forward and said, wait a minute, yeah, we want answers to these questions. And you folks saying we really put them on the hot seat and allowed us, blazed the way for us to petition for different types of documentation. And we are still getting them, still fighting for them. And we had just gotten In fact, we had just gotten an email today from the Maui Police Department, as well as who's handling part of the investigation, as well as a verification of a FedEx tracking the package of documents that are on their way pertaining to the plane crash. But if history tells us anything based on the documentation that we already have, a few things. Number one, the NTSB did not conduct any type of field investigation as they should have for an alleged crash or even a hard water landing that resulted in, or that was approximate cause of the death of a state official. Number two, we don't even know, there's nothing to suggest that an autopsy was done because, well, the person doing the autopsy reportedly at 7 o'clock in the morning wasn't even on that particular island at 7 o'clock in the morning, yet supposedly began the autopsy at that time. There was nothing billed for the autopsy, travel records, and or testing, medical testing. Nothing showing that in the billing records. So what we're left with from an investigative standpoint is, where's the body? Was there an autopsy done? Certainly it doesn't appear that there was. Or if there was, it certainly was not done in the manner in which they said it was done. That raises the question, this Subud member, I'm just trying to, saying this as many times as I can before we get cut off, this Subud member, Loretta Fuddy, we don't even know, based on the documentation that we've received, there's nothing to indicate that, seriously, there's nothing to indicate that there was any autopsy done on this woman. And everything
flight, when the planes crash, standards are implemented, or procedures are and protocols are followed, those were abandoned in this accident.
Yeah.
The strange surroundings of every other person on the plane survives. She even makes it out of the plane with the life jacket on, subsequently to die of a heart attack or
an arrhythmia, a heart arrhythmia. But the fact of the matter is, the preliminary findings from the autopsy was that she drowned, and then that was changed to a heart arrhythmia.
Yeah, they really wanted to put people's attention. They could have said smoke inhalation or
and you have to laugh in a way, because it's almost as if no one is going to look. So okay, we'll just put whatever. No one's going to check this out. But when we checked it out, my goodness, there is a whole lot of there are many inconsistencies in this death, in this crash, in this plane crash, or this hard water landing. And when we take a few steps back and take a look at this, there's enough evidence to suggest that there could very well have been other people in the water, either at the time of or immediately following the hard water landing. And in addition to that, given the photographic and video documentation, we know it has been edited even to the point of asking whether is this the same plane in the same, allegedly the same video footage. So in other words, we're questioning everything. Are you confused yet? I hope so, because so are we. Nothing with respect to any of these official reports are consistent with one another. In other words, the report from the fire department, the report from the police department, the report from the NTSB, yes, there was one, which stated that, we might not have been there, but here's what we found. I'm not kidding. That's essentially what it says. We might have not really responded to this, either in person, but we did make an inquiry, and here's what we found, meaning that they were not on the ground there. But none of these reports gel with one another. And you might think, well, that certainly sounds consistent with a homicide. If you've ever worked a homicide investigation, or if you're familiar with homicide investigations, a lot of times the more the stories line up, the less the more the stories line up together from different people, the more it suggests collusion. So the alternative of that is the more disparate the stories, the more genuine the reports seem. Except when they're so far off from one another that nothing makes sense.
You know, when people ask questions and report the facts, they're called conspiracy theorists, and these people are, making these things happen and turning them into through conspiracies, and then marginalizing the people who call them on and catch them in for the crimes they've committed.
Folks, it's ridiculous to beyond.
It is.
Words.
I mean, they have committed or created a system that suits them so well that they just can laugh. They're above the law. No matter what. I would say this. Obama and Holder could hold a press conference and sacrifice a child on the front lawn of the White House. Do you think they would get impeached? I say no. Not only would they get impeached, would they ever be arrested? I say no.
No, and that's how insane, and that goes to what I referenced with Russ Dizdar, the satanic aspect of this. I do believe that a lot of this is satanic and it's dark power, well beyond anything that we can humanly understand, which is why we use our program, and we talked about this last night. This is why we infuse so much of the biblical component into our program, because we cannot understand this with our human mind. We've got to look at this through the prism of biblical understanding in order to get a firm grasp on what's taking place. And what is taking place, folks, is a very dark, very ritualistic, very sinister series of events that include things like Obama, the man, and his selection and placement in the Oval Office. And I've got to tell you that I do believe that this was planned for many decades to have him, and not just him, but there were backups and backups and backups, including Deval Patrick as being one of the backups for Obama, and there are a couple of others as ritualistic mind control subjects. And this might sound like science fiction, like crazy talk, but let me tell you, I believe, based on, and this, I'll just say this, this is another reason why Joe and I have to go to Chicago. I'll just stop there. I mean, there's more than one reason we're going, but we're going to be talking with some people there, meeting with some people, and looking at the situation with respect to Obama's early years. So,
and we were going to do an investigative report on the scenes of gang violence, also in the sanctuary city of Chicago.
Sure, yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's
look forward to that, as well as.
So if you hear about Joe and I, coming to work with bullet holes on Monday, or having actually, being deceased from, or just being a statistic from Chicago, because we're not allowed to take our handguns into Chicago, then you're muted. Other button. There you go.
I'll be the one that is doing the video while you're the greater interviewer, so I'm going to put you out in the street. You'll have the bulletproof vest, so.
Oh, well, I appreciate
just hope
that.
Nobody shoots for the head.
Yeah. Well, we can laugh about it, but it's if you talk about the actual number of deaths from killings from black on black violence.
Can you imagine being a journalist or a reporter told to go investigate the gang activity in certain areas of the city, and you also know that it's a gun-free zone. You can't carry your own gun there.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It makes me almost not want to go. Not that I want to carry a gun around or would, but in a place that's so dangerous, Chicago. I mean, I saw the other day there was undocumented illegal aliens that unprovokingly attacked people on the subway platform with a machete.
That's disquieting.
I think I told you about that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and this is being, you have to understand too, we don't want to politicize this, and nor should we, but this is the agenda of the globalists, what we're seeing take place in Chicago and other urban areas, but in particular in Chicago, the murder capital of the world. How is the gun ban working out for you folks. How is that? You feel safer? Yeah. I was talking with someone early this morning about our state of Pennsylvania, folks. If you live in Pennsylvania, you're listening to this broadcast, know and understand this. We just got word that our governor is going to be signing on to a broader, more restrictive gun ban legislation. Did you know that, Joe? I'm not sure if you heard that or not, but
what was that? Our governor's going to be expanding it?
Is going to be signing on to a more restrictive gun. I'll just say.
Do you have any details?
I don't have the details yet, but there appear to be a couple of bills that are being submitted through the state legislature that our state governor, who was adamantly against any type of gun control laws, now has succumbed to political pressure in the state of Pennsylvania.
What's political pressure? I mean, there is a lot of gun violence, but I'd say on the
in Philly,
smaller side of and then all the rural Pennsylvania is, we do have regular crime and everything, but it's not an epidemic like in Chicago or like in New York in the 80s and 90s.
And even if it was, certainly restrictive gun legislation is not the answer. But just as kind of a heads up, the inside word is Governor Corbett is looking into perhaps implementing some pretty severe restrictive gun laws in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And
I don't think that'll go over too well if he does.
It already has. Just the talk of it has a lot of people extremely upset.
Maybe that's our answer as to why they disallowed the open carry protest a while back.
Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps.
To set the standard for the next time, if it had something like that would be passed, you can imagine they'd want to have another protest. Well, therefore, they already laid out a law or a order that they can't have these protests in the place that they have them.
Either way,
they'll say it's not about the legislation. This was already in place before then.
Well, yeah, and they've used that template before. So, but we have to keep watching and fighting back as they attempt to erode through illegal legislation on these gun laws. And when I was talking to this person today who was saying about this, in Pennsylvania, we certainly are not going to comply. And Governor, if you're listening, or the law enforcement officers, if you're listening, we will not comply with any law that is is against the Constitution. So, put us on your list. Put us on your list twice, 3 times. We would not comply with any such legislation because it's anti-constitutional. It's against our constitutional rights, and
therefore the law is null and void anyway. Legally.
Right. Legally,
but you go to a court, it doesn't matter. They would not recognize that as being a legitimate excuse for breaking the unconstitutional law. And this is, something I've been doing a lot of research into, but haven't put anything together as far as a comprehensive report to be able to explain it. But part of it, I had a lot of issues with, getting to this point of understanding, but our government was set up in a way, as much freedom as it gave us and as much liberty, it was also set up in a way where they knew that it would be able to be used to destroy the society at the same time. And it would be through the people destroying themselves. And, the secret society do these big false flags and create the monetary policy and overall the agenda, but as our human nature continues to get worse and worse, 100 years ago, with no TVs, every family pretty much lived in a single house, and they were very close and, focused on only the few important things that they had to worry about: survival, faith, and family. And we've gotten so far away from that today that, and just like the Satanist aspect, we talk about freedom of religion in the United States. Well, as much as we can't stand Satanism, we have to allow it to exist to a certain degree, because coming against it would say we're not advocating religious freedom. And if we come against them for their religion, that's us saying you can come against us for our religion, according to the law.
Correct.
So, I mean, these people, whoever set up these laws, either from their inception or the grand designer behind them or people later, have understood how to manipulate them, or the people, in a way, to where the laws are changed.
Well, that's you're right on the money. Moving quickly here because we're running short on time. I can't believe how quickly this program's gone.
I want to respond to a comment in chat. Is there any info in Wisconsin? I don't know if there was any news that happened in Wisconsin, but it's probably cold. And
I got some news, but it's of a personal nature. But
I got some important news if you want.
Well,
unless you have stuff.
Just let me hit this real quick. Some doctors are actually breaking their silence about the real-life horror that's playing out in Africa as Ebola spreads, and the renegade-in-chief's decision to send, some 3,000 troops there to Liberia to combat the virus. Look, this, according to these doctors, this PR maneuver is about what it is, could very well put Americans at risk of contracting Ebola here at home. And according to the World Health Organization, almost 5,000 people have contracted Ebola, and almost half of those have died. Several doctors have been afflicted with Ebola. 2 of them have died. A Doctors Without Borders staff member has already contracted the virus in Liberia and is being evacuated to France for treatment. And you can see that these doctors, who are highly trained people, got themselves infected, said Dr. Lee Hyab, former president of the American Physicians and Surgeons. So sending troops into an area, if they're dealing with one-on-one with a patient, they're not going to be able to protect themselves very well. It's not easy to prevent transmission because you get tired, you get careless, and you make mistakes. All it takes is one small microcosmic virus particle, if you will. So the bottom line here is this is all a PR maneuver. Even with quarantines in places where their outbreaks are occurring, even if a person infected with Ebola were to try to board a plane in the U.S., look, folks, we're being snookered, I guess, is the best way to put it here. We are being put at risk by the very officials who are making the laws, the World Health Organization, onto the renegade-in-chief and so on. But just think about those numbers: 5,000 infected, half of them dead. It's a lot of people, and there's 3,000 of our troops going there and being placed at risk of being infected, coming home and spreading the disease here. So you do the math, and you think about the possibilities. Dave Hodges, that show, we talked about that during Dave Hodges' show, and I know Steve Quayle had put up a link to that interview as well. So, Joe, to you.
In other important news, Air Force is the latest Army organization to come against the Lord. Air Force dumps "So Help Me God" from enlistment oath. This is something that was published, I think yesterday. But this goes on to state that, and there was just recently an issue within the Navy. They removed all the Bibles from any guest facilities at their bases and re-implemented them a couple weeks later. But members of the U.S. Air Force will no longer be required to say "So Help Me God" during their enlistment oath. A legal review of the rules that required the phrase occurred after the American Humanist Association threatened to sue on behalf of atheist airmen. The unnamed airman at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada was denied re-enlistment after August 25th after crossing the phase out of the oath. And this goes on to say, what? I'm dealing with all these pop-ups from this Washington Times article here. That's why I'm kind of body. But before we take into an instance when an airmen report concerns regarding religious freedom seriously, the Air Force stated on Tuesday, and they go on to say, we are pleased that the U.S. Department of Defense has confirmed our client has the First Amendment right to omit the reference to a supreme being in his re-enlistment oath. Monica Miller, an attorney with the AMA, said they go on to say, we hope for the Air Force will respect the constitutional rights of atheists in the future. The Army, Navy, Marine Corps all give enlistees the option to say, so help me God, or to leave it out. And this also, in an article we didn't get a chance to get into yesterday, about the Satanists being able to hand out literature in schools. I thought this was a very important article, and we only touched on the headline, that Satanists are being, in Florida and a few other states, are handing out literature that gives information about their quote-unquote religion. And, you know, should we have a problem with that? Well, what's the literature is about, yes, we should, but when we see the attacks and the rabid coming against the Bible, prayer, T-shirts that say the word Jesus, God bless you, being said in class when a person sneezes, any and every instance that we see that is used to say the word of the Lord or Jesus or God or the Bible has been attacked vehemently across the board in schools. They are letting, in New York, the Satanists pass out literature to students, and in Orlando, Florida, after the district decided to prohibit distribution of religious materials. So how can they justify this? They go on to say that, and they meaning the school board or the authority that said that the literature could not be passed out from a Christian view, that I think they say that the Satanist is not really a religion, it's more of a belief or a scientific understanding, something about nature. So the Bible is banned. The district vehemently came after or decided that and continued to rid the school of any references to God in Bibles.
Well, listen to this, which is very similar to what you're saying. This in Oklahoma. A police officer defies an order to celebrate Islam. Okay. A public interest law firm is right now petitioning the Supreme Court to review the case of a Christian police captain in Oklahoma who refused to attend or order officers under his command and control to attend services at a mosque. Well, guess what? This mosque has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, there's a panel of federal judges in Denver who wrote in an opinion. Let's see here. I'm looking at this. Okay, a panel of federal judges in Denver, in an opinion written by Judge Harris Hartz, found that it was perfectly appropriate for a police chief to order his subordinates to attend an Islamic mosque where Muslims discuss their beliefs, Muhammad, Mecca, and how Muslims pray. In addition to, listen to this, encourage officers to buy Islamic books, pamphlets, Qurans, and such. All right? So what you have here is a lower command officer defying his police chief, saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to order my guys to go to this PR fest at this mosque in Oklahoma. And so you've got the world of hurt coming down on this police officer. The lower court ruling came May 21st from the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in a case brought by Captain Paul Fields. Now, he'd been ordered by Tulsa police officials to either go to a special event at the local mosque himself or others to do that as well in his place or along with him. Now, he's 16 years on the force. Fields refused based on his religious freedom objections and was punished for doing so. So you got it in the schools, as Joe referenced. School districts. Now you've got it in the police settings here. You've got it in law enforcement settings.
And in Florida, I had some confusion here, and I apologize. There's something going on with my computer. I'm getting these video pop-ups, and I don't ever get pop-ups, and I'm getting tons of them here without even clicking things. So I was being interrupted as I was getting into this. But we are told through the article here that there was a reverse on the decision to be able now to hand out Bibles in Florida schools, they say. The officials of the school said they review the right to review any materials, whether they're atheist, Satanist, or Christian materials that are handed out to children. Now, the people who orchestrated the temple, Satanist temple in New York, have been preparing to distribute a book called the Satanic Children's Big Book of Activities. And this is the same school they're going to be distributing this stuff at and have been, that has now banned chaplains and prayer from high school football games. So we see this double standard here, and it goes on to say, one gentleman says it best here, that I feel that people should be allowed to look at a number of different views, but regardless of atheists or Bible thumpers, they need to leave the children out of the crosshairs. And I agree to an extent to that. I mean, you're giving the different groups, the ability to hand out all this material. If it's so important, teach it in schools. Maybe not, because we know how they would teach it. When I was in school, English class was more about ancient Greek gods and philosophy, not about English.
No, and that's very true. Go ahead.
This article, and then you can hit whatever you need. This is really important. Tiny implants could give humans self-healing powers. A new military-sponsored program aims to develop tiny devices that can be implanted in the body, where electrical impulses will be used to monitor body organs, healing these critical parts when they become infected or injured. Known as electrical prescriptions, or ElectRx, the program will dispense pharmaceutical drugs and offer a new way to treat illnesses. According to DARPA, the DARPA and the U.S. Department of Defense are responsible for developing this program, and the technology they plan to roll out will fundamentally change the manner in which doctors diagnose, monitor, and treat illnesses. Now, do you remember we were going over some of the government biometric identification information?
Right.
Medical countermeasures.
Right.
We hear and see this huge Ebola threat.
Right.
Well, what better way, they say, they can real-time monitor a patient's heart rate, any infectious diseases or illnesses that come into their body in real time. What better excuse than to implement something like this for the reasons of, medical countermeasures, as they say, and surveillance, so they can be able to tell who is getting sick, who's getting infected, and where they are. I mean, it sounds like something that would be excellent in healthcare, right?
Well, my wife and I had this conversation today. For example, microchipping your pet. Okay, it sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? And I think it's perfectly fine to do that. I really do, to microchip your pet. However, a pet, a dog, a cat, whatever, is not a human being.
And you know what I've learned the other day? The microchips only are useful if they're somebody's reading them.
Well, of course.
I thought you could find your pet if it got lost or ran away.
No. I mean, if somebody finds it, brings it to a shelter, they've got a reader, they can find and return your pet to your lost pet to you. Okay. To me, I think that's fine. But I also you've got to look at the conditioning that this entails. I believe does this not make it a little bit easier for humans to be chipped? If you're going to chip your good four-legged friend, isn't it a little bit easier for you to accept that? And I think it is. So you've got to look at both sides of the argument here. Very quickly, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know this, especially if you're outside of New York State. perhaps you've never heard of this guy. It doesn't matter, but the fact is, he's a big time. Well, he's a shoo-in for state assembly. His name is Charles Barron. He's a New York City councilman, folks. This is what's going on in New York City, New York State, and is spreading like an epidemic or a pandemic across the United States. Charles Barron was interviewed with the New York Observer, and listen to what he said. He said, all my heroes basically were America's enemies. And in this particular interview, he reiterated his admiration of dictators and said that he hoped to host one of them, specifically Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, in the States again. He would love for him to come to Albany, he said. He would love for him to come anywhere in the United States. He would host a dinner for him. In fact, he famously hosted Mugabe as city councilman when he was city councilman in 2002. Well, who is Mugabe? He took control of Zimbabwe in 83. He instituted martial law in 87. He rose to power after starting an ethnic cleansing in which tens of thousands of people were murdered. And yet this idiot New York councilman and state assembly shoo-in Charles Barron, this intellectual midget, praised him because he seized land from white landowners and redistributed it to black Africans. You talk about racism? And how does he respond to complaints about his statements? He said, no one's perfect. I see him as a freedom fighter. This is the leadership that we have in this country right now. And isn't it funny that we get the government that we work for, earn, and deserve, and people are just kind of either applauding his actions or are ignoring his actions? Neither one should be done. Unbelievable.
You are absolutely right. In other news here, we got about 15 minutes left of the show, and we do have a few things to get into. Back to...
I'm not even sure our studio call board works is actually functioning at the moment.
We do have callers. Maybe we could take a few calls.
All right. Well, let's give this a try when you get done. Go ahead.
This is in a Danish town, and it goes back to the microchip. Now they are doing this with homeless people. They are GPS device chipping them with GPS devices, and this is being done as a test to see the effectiveness of this. The city council voted and ruled that 20 local homeless people should be fitted with trackers to keep track of their movements and improve city planning for objects such as beaches and shelters. In short, we want to know how the council can adapt to keep making offers to socially marginalized. They go on to say that these are volunteers who agreed to be a part of this, but they say the GPS devices are designed to help care homes keep track of dementia patients. They mean healthcare, which is a typo, but they keep track of dementia patients with a tendency to wander off. And they go on to say, as far as I know, this has never been tried anywhere else in the world before, but this is the beginning of this technology being used on a massive scale. That from a Danish city councilman.
Interesting, and look for this to spread. Look for this to be undertaken elsewhere.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to mention is a headline that if people want to do research on this, I am doing a lot and have been doing a lot. There's a new UN publication, post-2015 development agenda, and they met on the 16th, which is just 3 days ago, the United Nations General Assembly, the 69th annual session, and they announced a new historic opportunity to formulate a post-2015 development agenda where they say that this will be the framework to eradicate poverty, hunger, and promote sustainable development and inclusive economic growth.
And remember, anytime you hear the phrase sustainable development, start to worry or start to perk up your ears and understand this is an Agenda 21 platform.
They go on to say that this is a momentous responsibility to ensure adequate means of implementing an agenda, in terms of finance, technology, and development, transfer, capacity building, and the mobilization through the strengthened global partnerships and cooperation from both the public and private sector, government, and civil service. They go on to state that this stems from their Rio 20 documents, which was the Agenda 21 beginning, and that to preserve planet Earth, we must all take an oath to be a part of and help and be a partner of Mother Earth. They call it harmonizing with Mother Earth. And they say each citizen eventually, under the global government authority of the UN, through implementing their Millennium Development Goals first, will eradicate poverty, and all will have to take an oath to be a part of a community dedicated to Mother Earth, as they say.
Gaia.
And that's a very, 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 very short summary of what this is.
And watch for this, ladies and gentlemen. Watch for this sneak up, and this will sneak up behind all of us, just as the Small Arms Bill, Small Arms Trade Treaty, and other such treaties, SOPA, PEEP, and Act, all of those just repackaged and sneaking up behind us.
They say that we are in one of the most, what do they say here? We are in the most, dangerous time in the history of the world.
Of course.
Their words. They're one of the most defining global challenges of our time.
But not for the reasons that they dictate or what they define.
No, their problems they see as the major problems are, too many people in too many parts of the world, too much consumption, too much capitalism, supply and demand. They need to see less people. They want to see less people. They want a more manageable population.
That's right. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say this too, and it just seems like we're so many headlines. But I'll say that the part of the show with Jeremiah and the efforts, the real on-the-ground efforts that were talked about with Steve Quayle, Jeremiah Farrell in the first part of the program, so important because that's what this is all about, folks. I mean, look, we can talk until we're blue, green, purple, and until we have no air left and no words left.
Most days we do.
Well, of course. But the fact is, what Jeremiah Farrell and his group is doing, again, just go to Hagmann on the left-hand side. His website is there, or stevequayle.com, either one, and you can read what they're doing. Look, they're actually making a difference. They're saving souls. They are actually on the ground, boots on the ground, in the trenches. So, yes, our decision to have him and Steve for the first half of the program, I think is so important because it works. We could have all the faith in the world and pray and talk about news and analyze news, but to let you folks know this stuff is really going on, and to really they're really doing the yeoman's work to save souls one at a time.
Right.
We need to know this. I mean, this is what it's all about, isn't it? At the end of the day, this is what it's all about.
And as the UN states here, this is not just a health crisis, and they're referring to Ebola, I imagine, but they go on to say we have a grave economic and social crisis with the consequences to which have spread beyond the point of no return.
Well, and you're going to have that algorithmic, exponential algorithmic explosion. I don't recall the exact phrase, but watch for it. People yelled at us, said, "Oh, you're just making a mountain out of a molehill. It's no big deal. If it was a big deal, we'd be the CDC certainly would have alerted us, or other agencies would have alerted us, or at least somebody would have spoken up." Folks, we've got people speaking up about Ebola. We've had people speaking up about Ebola, but it's unfortunate that a lot of it's fallen on deaf ears, or people refuse to believe it. I got an email from a gentleman today whose wife is a nurse at a hospital who, despite the paperwork, despite getting the information about Ebola, she wears like a charcoal mask as protection, potential protection for Ebola. That's the extent of the protection. Are you serious? And he was explaining, or explaining is perhaps the wrong word, but saying, this is not right. No one is getting the enormity of this threat. So, look, we've got that threat. I also want to say about Benghazi, the hearings this week, once again, focusing on the diplomatic security angle of things. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe that, it's of course, it's going to go into 2016. You're looking at a year and 3 months, 4 months worth of hearings potentially, a year and a half maybe. Are we going to get the truth out of Benghazi? No, I don't think so. I think Trey Gowdy's on a leash, and from all indications we have, the 7 Republican, 5 Democrat panel, that's known as the Select Committee in Benghazi, is essentially being managed from the top, and the conclusions are already predetermined, and this is not going to really have any adverse effect on the candidacy, if there is a candidacy, on Hillary Rodham Clinton. I got an email from some moron today. Yeah, moron, and you know who you are. You're muted, I think. But
logically challenged, or
no, moron. No, moron, saying Hillary's going to be our next president. Deal with it. Quit whining. I'm not whining. I don't care. It doesn't. It really doesn't matter.
And I know that's not why you said what you said.
No, I mean,
the attitude and the thinking that's some. I mean, what are they bragging about?
Well, they're intellectually hobbled. They cannot make they can't really engage in an intellectual dialogue.
I mean, are you guys proud of the fact out there that are sending these emails that each president's worse than the last, deteriorating with any resemblance of any kind of republic we once had, and turning the citizens into more poverty and killing people abroad and starting wars until their total control agendas here due to the lack of people left to fight against them? Is that what you're laughing at? Or are you laughing at the fact that what we perceive and want to have or see in the world, the improvements we want to see in this nation, are never going to be realized?
Exactly, and it's unfortunate, but the bottom line with this, and as Steve Quayle points out, look, there's no political solution for the spiritual problems. We're neck deep in spiritual problems. It's really hard to fathom how far down how far off the cliff we are in the vehicle that's falling toward the bottom of the cliff. But as long as we know, again, as long as we understand we're fighting from a position of victory, we have to understand we have to still fight and never lose that. We all have to take up arms, spiritual arms, and fight.
Yep, that armor of God Paul McGuire talked about yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought Paul McGuire yesterday was absolutely right on the money, talking about having joy as well, and being ending with that specific joy, which also reminds me, folks, we had talked about different books, including his books. We're going to be publishing a list of those first 10 emailers here on our website, HagmannHagmann.com. You'll be notified by email as well. I think we got over 800 entries. I'm not exactly certain, but there were quite a few, and we had 10 to choose from, or the first 10 that came in as requested will be advised via email. So if you don't get an email by 6 o'clock tomorrow evening Eastern time, then you'll know that you weren't selected. We apologize for it. We only have a limited number. But also, on the subject of books, not only Maria Knies's book, Prepare for Persecution, but Greg Jackson's book, don't forget about that, 40 Things to Teach Your Children. It's an important book.
It is.
And everyone should have a copy. We apologize for the phone calls. Our switchboard is down for whatever reason. We apologize for the problems with the audio. Don't know exactly what happened there. Have our own ideas, but that's a whole other program. Tomorrow night, Sheila Zielinski will be on with one or both of us. Who knows? We have to just work a few things out. It's going to be a great program. The weekend edition tomorrow night with Sheila Zielinski. She's always a crowd pleaser and very well researched. With that, folks, we're at the end of the program already. unbelievable.
Till we meet again, stay safe, God bless, have a great weekend.
Good night.